Good evening, council staff, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery and those who may be watching online. Welcome to our August council meeting. The City of Swan disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Where an application for an approval, a licence or the like is considered or determined during this meeting, the City warns that neither the applicant nor any other person or body should rely upon that discussion or determination until written notice of either an approval and the conditions which relate to it or the refusal of the application has been issued by the City. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed, but the recording will also be archived and made available on the City's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time and public statement time, it is assumed that your consent is given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council and other members of the public. Visual images of the public will not be captured. Conditions of entry: no electronic, visual or audio recording equipment, device or instrument is permitted to be used. A person who breaches this provision of the City of Swan Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 will be required to immediately leave the premises. Attendance and apologies, Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, we have none this evening.
Okay, no leave of absence. Declaration of financial and proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality. Are there any other than listed at the agenda forum?
Mr Mayor, we have one further declaration of interest from Councillor Catalano. It's in relation to item 3.1, the adoption of the Midland Local Area Plan. The interest is one of impartiality, as Councillor Catalano is a member of the Blackadder Catchment Group who made a submission.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Any other declarations, council staff? Councillor Richardson.
5.3.
Okay. Councillor Richardson, 5.3.
I've got a question at this point, Mr Mayor.
Yes,
If I live in Guildford and we've got a change to the parking scheme in Guildford, but it's not near my house, do I have to declare an impartiality interest?
When it's not near your house? I wouldn't think so.
It's not near my house.
Mr Albright? It is up to you ultimately, councillor, but
I don't think it's needed.
if you're saying whether you have to.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think that could be considered an interest in common, but as you said, it is up to the councillor to determine whether they wish to declare.
Okay. No other declarations, councillors? Thank you. Okay, we now move to public question time. Answers and questions recorded in the minutes of the meeting may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. Questions and answers marked with an asterisk have been amended either for the purpose of summarising, e.g. removing preambles or statements, etc., or editing. Answers to questions that were taken on notice. Responses to questions taken on notice in the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 28th of July from Mr Aaron Bowman, Bob Baku, Mark Church, Sam Atasnavas, Gavin Troy and David Carr were included in the agenda. A response to a number of questions were not published in the agenda and have been provided below for tabling. These questions were from Mr Aaron Bowman, Bob Baku, Mark Church, Sam Astanashvas and David Carr. And those answers have been provided. Now move to 5.2, questions relating to ports on the agenda. 5.2.1, questions for which due notice has been given or have nil. Questions without notice, the following have registered for questions on the agenda: Mr Aaron Bowman, Mr Jesse J. Fillet, Mr Matt Murphy and Mr Phil Bartlett. The first is Mr Aaron Bowman's, and yes, Mr Troy, I have you listed here also.
Mr Mayor, security and safety of our community is a significant issue for me, and I applaud Councillor Keeley's notice of motion. Would Council consider adding a little more to the motion and include that in the report that's presented back to Council, that the administration provide detailed information regarding those local governments that provide a security patrol service in-house, as this option has been proven many times that it's a cheaper option and can provide more benefits than an outsourced service. An example I give is the City of Stirling, which costs only $30 per resident for a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service.
We'll have to take that on notice at this point.
A note in the minutes of the 11th of August Tender Review Committee that the committee, 1, note the termination of any contractual relationship with ADCO Construction, and 2, endorse the city to re-tender the works for the Allenbrook Aquatic Facility. Why was this? What will the time delay be, and will there be additional costs?
Mr. Coaten, do you want to answer that?
Good on notice.
Take it on notice, okay.
Mr Mayor, there seems to be a lot of tension at the moment with the Allenbrook District Open Space North Pavilion, with both yourself and Councillor Richardson both having notice of motions. Not sure how the order of the agenda has worked out, but that's for others to determine. Mr Mayor, both yours and Councillor Richardson's motions have some good points, but if you had worked together, there could have been a better outcome. Instead of your willingness to just commit $100,000 of unbudgeted funds, which will mean something else misses out, and you have not even considered the other sporting clubs in the area, some of which have very little in the way of facilities. Would Council consider combining the two motions, which could be moved by yourself and then allowed to be seconded by Councillor Richardson, as follows? Request the CEO to prepare a report for a future meeting of Council for all sporting facilities within the Pearce Ward that identifies the refurbished needs of each and every facility and the storage requirements based on the quantity of players, sports played, age and gender of playing groups using the facilities. And I suggest the reason for the change to both notice and motions would be to allow for proper and orderly planning and budgeting of all sporting facilities in the Pearce Ward on the highest priority needs basis and not the ad hoc basis that's being proposed by you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Not at this point in time, I would suggest, but we'll perhaps deal with that when we get to the motions. Next is Mr Jesse J. Fillet.
Mr Mayor, regarding item 13.10, draft desktop heritage assessments for properties nominated in 2020, with engagement of external consultants to perform heritage assessments, could the Council please explain to what technical level of depth internal resources are utilised to perform these before external consultants are engaged to ensure the risk and value for money is achieved for the ratepayer, and the volume of heritage assessments performed internally, externally and combined?
Mr Russell.
I take that on notice, please, Mr Mayor.
My question is to you, Mr Mayor. Given the standards set out in the City's Code of Conduct for councillors and your conduct, will you be resigning in order to maintain
Mr.
the
Fillet,
integrity of
Mr.
the
Fillet,
council and to ensure you no longer bring the
Mr.
city into
Fillet,
disrepute? Yes?
This is questions regarding to items on the agenda. So do you have any further questions on items on the agenda?
Is that an answer to the question?
No, I'm putting you in the right place for this meeting. This topic here is questions on items on the agenda.
I was referring, Mr Mayor, with respect to the Code of Conduct which is on the agenda.
The answer to you is no.
Okay, thank you. So I'll proceed. Again, my question is to you, Mr Mayor. How can the people in the city have any faith in you to execute your duties, given your record of breaches of the standards expected for councillors, to then only apologise and expect everyone to forget?
It's up for them to make their own determination, I would guess.
Thank you.
Next with questions is Mr Matt Murphy.
Mr Mayor, regarding Part B, item 7.2, review of committees of council, the Tenders Review Committee, to enhance due diligence and to ensure the value for money for ratepayer is achieved, what was the rationale behind setting the limit on delegated authority for tenders at condition 2 exceeding a value of $1 million or as referred by the CEO?
Ms Albright, perhaps?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the Council set the delegation at a previous Council meeting. The limit of $1 million was set based on benchmarking of other similar local governments for their delegations, and it allows for the large tenders to come through to the Tender Review Committee and for the smaller value tenders to be determined under delegated authority by the CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, has Councillor Richardson offered or delivered any support, financial or otherwise, to any candidate in the upcoming elections?
I can't answer that question. and I think it's inappropriate, but if Councillor Richardson wishes to answer it, that's up to her, but I certainly can't answer it.
Lastly, again through you, Mr Mayor, has Councillor Richardson installed or organised any candidates to run in the upcoming election?
I think the answer is that's the same.
Okay. Thank you.
No. Takes care of it later. Okay, next question is from Mr Phil Bartlett. Yeah, I know. He doesn't get another go at it.
Through yourself, Mr Mayor. Regarding item 4.5, revised development contribution plan, proposed amendment to number 200 to the local planning scheme number 17 to establish and insert a development contribution plan for development contribution area number 8, the Henley Brook Urban Precinct. The question is, to what level does Council leverage internal experience and resources to test and validate estimated infrastructure costs, namely through the cost apportionment schedule? Value for money for prospective residents to the City of Swan.
Mr Russell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, in short, the City does utilise extensive external parties professionally in engagement to prepare up these DCPs. We have, for some long time, utilised the services and often refer back to Integrin, who specialise in this field and did our DCPs for the Urban Growth Corridor. They're based in Queensland and have extensive experience in this area. We obviously also utilised quantity surveyors and independent land valuers to assess the land values and the unit costs of infrastructure. And as we speak, we're actually preparing to engage a second opinion on a quantity surveyor for the unit cost for the Henley Brook DCP.
Further question?
Yes. Through you, Mr Mayor, does Councillor Jones stand by the horrific comments made by other councillors, namely you, Mr Mayor, published in recent press?
I remind you, although I inadvertently did it before, this is questions relating to items on the agenda. So you have another question for an item on the agenda?
Not at this stage.
Thank you. Mr Gavin Troy.
Mr Mayor, I don't think my question is related to this evening's agenda. Perhaps I can be called up at your next item.
Thank you, Mr Troy. Okay, 5.3 is questions which due notice has been given, and there are questions from Ms Raylene Bartlett, David Willer and Naomi Jenkins, and those answers have been supplied. We now move to questions relating to a general nature, and Mr Follet, if you have any more left.
No.
Thank you. Mr Murphy, I gather you were given the opportunity, you've asked yours, so you won't be coming back? No. Mr Bartlett? None. Ms Sarah Howlett?
Good evening, Council. My question, I think I'll ask through you, Mr Mayor, is can the City please give an update as to the status of the parking bays proposed to be put under the Sugar Gums at Fulton Rule Park as part of the St Jude's development?
Second, Mr Russell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I can say that my colleague, the Executive Manager of Planning and Development, made inquiries with the owner of St Jude's as to the prospects of having them not pursue their...
I've just realised I've got an interest in this, so I've got a proximity.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Do you mind if I leave the room?
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, Ms Howlett, but we weren't aware of what your question was. So.
Oh, I did
Councillor
give notice. I gave
wasn't
notice.
Pre-armed.
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry.
That's fine. Thanks,
Thank you,
Mr Russell.
Mr van der Linden made inquiries with Mr Joseph, the owner of St Jude's, as to the prospect of St Jude's agreeing to modify their approval to resite the car bays from the location around and beneath the Sugar Gums to the other side of the road, and in principle subject to certain arrangements as to who would facilitate what costs around doing the work to submit the documentation for that. St Jude's, I believe, were amenable to that idea. So that is ongoing, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Ms Russell.
Okay, thank you. That was all.
Is that it?
Yep.
Short and sweet. Mr Gavin Troy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I do apologise for
Recall, Councillor Johnson.
a preliminary explanation of this question. The consideration of the Public Transport Authority's Development Application Part 2 associated with the remaining development of the rail reserve bounded by Lloyd Street, Elgee Street and Robinson Road, following the earlier March 2021 limited advertising period, has again been deferred from consideration by Development WA. That Development Application Part 2, as the earlier Part 1 development application that identified the new railway assembly and electrical testing facilities only, had both failed to make reference to closure of Robinson Road, a surprising omission considering the Robinson Road had been a public road with a rail crossing for in the order of 100 years. I have become aware that the continuing postponement of the Development WA's consideration of Development Application Part 2 is due to the intransigence of the Public Transport Authority to recognise recent traffic studies commissioned by the MRWA that reveal an unacceptable outcome if Robinson Road is closed in the medium and long term, and that a solution had to be found. Mr Mayor, you successfully moved a motion C13 on Robinson Road at the 28th July Ordinary Council meeting that included a clause requesting an urgent briefing from the Public Transport Authority on the current and future use of Robinson Road, Bellevue. Unfortunately, your motion failed to recognise that the Main Roads WA was a critical input to any discussion involving questions of traffic flow and were an essential part to any discussion on the Robinson Road proposed closure, particularly when your previous CEO was involved in an invitation forward to the MRWA to undertake an on-site inspection, which then led to the MRWA commissioned traffic study being undertaken in January 2021, this year. Mr Mayor, will you now move a motion that the MRWA be requested to discuss with the city's officers the following traffic issues bearing on the overall Midland scene, and that a full report be brought before Council as soon as possible? The issues being the Robinson Road proposed closure, secondly, the Lloyd Street Clayton Road congestion existent today, 3, the inadequacy of the Clayton Road roundabout, commented by nearly every member of your public, 4th, the proposed Lloyd Street Abernethy connection and the consequences thereof, 5, I believe, the potential traffic distribution northward through Lloyd Street involving the Great Eastern Highway intersection, Morrison Road intersection, Bishop Road intersection, Bishop Road Great Northern Highway roundabout and Great Northern Highway Roe Highway intersection, and the Morrison Road flyover. And finally and critically, the potential queuing problems associated with access to Cale Street, New Cale Street, and the new proposed Midland Railway Station for commuters using pedestrian, cycling, motorcycling, car or bus access. This analysis did not form part of the undisclosed 2017 Jacobs Traffic Report commissioned by the PTA and has not been publicly addressed to this date.
Okay, so...
sorry, I have a second question. Not quite as long.
Well, can I... My memory's not that good now, Mr Troy.
What I was asking you to do?
But I'll
will you now move a motion?
Hang on. I'll answer your first question. I'll take that under consideration, and if anything, it'll be at the next council meeting. And I do remember the motion I moved, and I remember consulting with you in the afternoon, and we were both fine. So I'll take your next question.
My dear Mayor, I sent you an amendment to the motion to come before the last meeting.
Well,
it wasn't considered in the final documentation you put forward. It failed to mention the MRWA.
You got another question?
Yes, I do. This relates, a procedures document was published by the City in relation to the forthcoming special electors meeting scheduled for the 31st of August. And I have been answered tonight by one of your staff, but I think this is appropriate to go on record. Can you please advise if your stated procedures, which are unclear to this point, and following questions, statements and submitted motions, whereby the attendees are hopefully better informed, will the meeting procedures permit a motion rising from the floor? If the answer is yes, will you now correctly inform the public before the meeting? And if the answer is no, how do you explain this basic breach of meeting procedure?
Mr. CEO?
Mr Mayor, the short answer is yes. It was brought to our attention last Thursday on the 19th. The meeting procedures have been updated, but our preference is to receive them in advance so that we can get them on the screen. But what we are going to do, Mr Troy, is send out an email to all the people that have registered and advise them that they can raise motions from the floor on the evening. So they'll get that correspondence this week.
Mr Mayor, supplementary to that, will the public be advised? That could influence the numbers that attend.
Mr. CEO?
Mr Mayor, if that's a request, then we could put it out as we normally would advertise. So we could put something out on our social media and things like that if that would appease Mr Troy. Just to tick that off.
Thank you. Any other members of the gallery wish to ask a question of a general nature? No, thank you. We now move to public statement time. 4 people are registered for a public statement. Each person will be allowed 2 minutes. The first is Mr David Willer in regards to the City of Swan grants.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. In the past few weeks, I've been meeting a lot of disgruntled ratepayers. There are around 70 incorporated associations in Ellenbrook, but you would never know it because all the attention goes just to one group. This group receives generous funding from the City. Since July the 1st, 2020, the City has handed over more than $40,000. However, this group is something of a mystery. If you go onto the website, there is no information as to who belongs to the group or who leads it. There is no information given about public meetings or details about annual general meetings. Given that the group gets such a large amount of money from the City, essentially ratepayers' funds, this seems wrong. Large events are run through this group, including the annual Elfinbrook Christmas event. Community groups have complained to me that they're unable to obtain a stall or run an activity or perform on stage there. To give some examples, Combination, Jimmy's Soft Serve Ice Cream, who incidentally offered free ice cream for everybody at these events. Year after year, the same churches, the same choirs, the same businesses are given a platform, and year after year, the same businesses and groups miss out. It is these people I'm standing here to speak on behalf of. The group which looms so large in the Pearce Ward is the Ellenbrook Community Collective, who previously was chaired by Councillor McCulloch, the Mayor and Councillor Paddy Jones. They featured on the ECC website as being on the executive, but for some time all such detail has been removed. The high-profile events run by the ECC gives these councillors plenty of opportunity for publicity and the chance to control which business and groups benefit. Ratepayers believe it is time for the City to either withdraw funding from this group or ensure it is put in the hands of the community and run by community members rather than councillors. It needs to be transparent and meetings should be open to the public. Having councillors wield such control over a community group with generous funding from the City is not a good look. It gives them a perceived electoral advantage and does not pass the pub test. Please put a stop to this and give the 69 or so other incorporated associations in Ellenbrook a chance to have a share. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr Willett. The next question is Ms Shirley Routley on the Shady Hills Bushfire Ready Group.
Good afternoon, and Mr Mayor and councillors, thank you for your time. I represent the 250 residents of Shady Hills and many more in the immediate areas surrounding Shady Hills. I'm also a local volunteer firefighter and facilitate the bushfire ready groups for Bullsbrook. Council have been aware of the requirement for the second access road to Shady Hills since the subdivision was approved in 2006. It's been nearly 5 years since we submitted the latest petition to the council to request you to build our road. In the past 5 years, there have been 3 significant fires that could easily have taken the lives and properties of the residents of this area. The most recent had us under severe risk and threat for 4 days. The group has worked closely with the councillors, the council, state government to achieve the current proposal, wherein council has received $1.9 million worth of funding from the state government and a generous offer by the developers to finally build our road and to cede the land to the council. We also worked with the consultant that the council paid to write the report around the risk associated with bushfire in Shady Hills. He also recommended you build our road. From your notes, you will understand the developer's contribution is under threat if the council does not approve the recommendation as stated in your minutes. The partnership between the landowners and the developer hinges on the council approval. There is no point in further delaying a decision by council as proposed in the last council meeting. The developers are saying that they could commence building our road in January 2022. This will not happen if the council further delays making decisions around this proposal. Further delays in the commitment to these proposals will mean that the new subdivision may not happen. Council will then need to fund the entire cost of the road, as well as the purchase of the land from the developers. The proposed road is a
Shirley, have you got much to go?
No, a little bit.
Cool.
Won't
Thank
be
you.
long. So the road proposed is a bidirectional bitumen road. That's absolutely critical for the incoming and outgoing residents and emergency services to get into Shady Hills. So we trust that that's what will be proposed by the council. We implore you to approve the recommendation and to commence the building of our second exit road before we are again put under significant threat by another bushfire season. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alley. The next speaker on the same item is Mr. Richard Atkins from Macrae Investments. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm representing the owners of Yarimba Lot 302 Lage Road, Bullsbrook. I just want to ensure that the council appreciates that deferring this decision tonight, which was discussed at last week's meeting, may result in our development not going ahead and the city then losing the opportunity for us to contribute 43% to the cost of this road, as we've proposed. We have a deal with a proposed developer, Cube, which is subject to getting this agreement in place now. Finalising this agreement with the city is on a critical path so that we can move forward to do the detailed survey, design and tendering, which will confirm the construction costs and start by 1 January so we can finish the road pre-winter. A delay tonight will push the entire project back by a year and Cube may walk away from the deal that we're doing with them. Their capital needs to be employed, and if they don't put it in this deal, they might put it somewhere else. And just to be clear, the current owners, Park and the Macrae, will not continue the development without someone like Cube, and then the deal with the city won't proceed. We advertised this property broadly to a lot of developers, and Cube were the only people that put an offer on the table. So it's not as though we got Plan B if Cube walk away. And that's just the commercial reality that we're dealing with. In terms of cost, which was a concern last week, there is a preliminary order of probable costs, which is quite detailed in terms of its design and the work that the engineering has gone into it. So it's not just a thumbsuck number, but it is a preliminary order. And so we need the above agreement to be put in place so that we can go to the next stage of doing the detailed design to provide the final costing. If we don't do that, if we don't have this agreement, we can't go to that next stage. It's an iterative process to get that final cost. And remember, we're paying 43% of the cost. So we're highly motivated to make sure that the cost is as low as possible. That's just where we're at. Finally, this deal only goes forward if we get a subdivision approval. I note that there's an amended proposal put together tonight that allows for the scenario that if there's not an agreement with the landowners, that the city moves ahead and funds it and develops it, and that's fine. That's up for the city to do. I would suggest, though, that if that doesn't succeed tonight, that this resolution is also amended to say, in the event that the landowners do not receive a subdivision approval, the cost, funding and construction of the road will be referred back to council for further consideration. That allows the council to approve tonight's resolution, which is just a deal with the landowners, and if that doesn't go, then it comes back to council to be dealt with.
Thanks, Mr Atkins. I'm
So-
you go way over time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next speaker is Ms Sarah Howlett regarding item 3.1, the adoption of the Midland Local Area Plan.
Hello again. Okay, so I refer to the Midland Local Area Plan. The good people of Midland were asked to contribute to the Midland Local Area Plan online, and 149 survey responses were received. Ranking at number 4, so in the top 5, was to promote and protect Midland's heritage. This actually did rank at number 1 in the list of priorities in the first consultation phase. It seems, though, that this is at odds with the desktop heritage assessment for the properties nominated in 2020. As you leave Perth City and head east through Mount Lawley, Bayswater, Maylands, Bassendean, Guildford, you can see the value in preserved heritage in regular houses that are restored, and they create highly desirable suburbs. Midland can be the same. All homes put forward on the heritage assessment failed to receive protection. They were deemed to not have enough significance. I'm here to remind you that heritage matters, heritage protection matters, and heritage homes in Midland matter. We, the city, in fact, own several heritage homes in Midland that are subject to repeated squatters. What kind of example is the city setting to other home owners? Why doesn't the city maintain its heritage homes, or is this demolition by neglect? We can do better, we should do better to protect our valuable history in Midland. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Howlett. That's all we have in regards to public statements. Now move to petitions. I have one petition containing 17 signatures in regards to a shelter being installed at Averley Dog Park. Are there any other petitions? No, in that case I need a motion that they be accepted and referred to the CEO for report back to future council. Move Councillor Kiley, seconded Councillor Parry. No one against, we'll hear that carried. No other petitions. Deputations, announcements, I have none. Members' questions 10.1, answer to questions which were taken on notice. Responses to questions taken on notice at the ordinary council meeting of 28 July from Councillor Johnson and Councillor Catalano are recorded in the agenda. The response to a question from Councillor Catalano not included the agenda is tabled below in the documents. 10.2, questions which due notice has been given. I have questions from Councillor Johnson and they have been tabled and answered. 10.3 is questions for which due notice has not been given. Additional questions have been received from Councillor Johnson and they have been answered. Councillors, are there any other councillors' questions? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. The 2017 Jacobs Traffic Report. Now, I get the impression that members of the public, some members of the public, have seen the traffic report. Have you seen it? Have you read it?
Councillor Coley, no, Councillor.
Okay, well, okay. If I can't ask a question of somebody in the gallery, that's fine. That's fine. If I can't ask a question of people in the gallery, that's fine. What I'd like, I have asked for this in an email some time ago. If we could have a copy, it was after that article in the West Australian. If we could have a copy, councillors could have a copy of the Jacobs Traffic Report. And I haven't received a response from or to my email. So I'd like to request tonight that we do, each of us councillors, particularly I'd be interested, in a copy of the Jacobs. Yes, please. Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Coaten.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The city doesn't have a copy. We have asked Main Roads for a copy, and staff followed up again as recently as today to see if we could be provided with a copy.
Okay.
And if we do receive one, we will circulate it to
Thank
councillors if Main Roads agree to that.
Thanks, Mr Caton. Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have 3 questions. The first one is in regard to the sales office in Brigadoon. Question is, will the CEO advise if the city has given notice to Pete Real Estate to repair the damage to the Brigadoon sales office to be restored to the satisfaction of the city following recent storm damage? If yes, when will the repair work commence? If no, please advise on what actions will be taken to repair the valuable city asset, and is the building covered by insurance, either by the city's insurance or Pete's insurance? And you can take these on notice.
I think Mr Caton's got a response.
I might take some of the detail on notice, but the land isn't actually vested in the city, so the city is aware of the damage and has been negotiating or speaking to the state government about it. But so yeah, it's not actually vested in the city. But I'll take them on notice and respond in more detail.
Okay. Councillor Kiley, I think you had a question.
I've got 2 more.
Oh, you got 2 more. Sorry, I thought
I've got
there was
2 more. I said 3.
3 with 3 in them. Okay.
The second question is on rural rating. Will the CEO take immediate action to resolve the unacceptable inequities resulting from the ill-conceived rural rating review when rural residents innocently got caught up inadvertently being shifted from UV to GRV rating category? Further, will the CEO finally allow rural residents caught up in the bureaucratic red tape to return to the UV rating category on request and unencumbered by questions about rural land use, to once and for all bring the situation to a level playing field until definitions about the what constitutes rural activity are undertaken?
Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, there's a lot of detail in there. My understanding is that the council have actually put the rating review UVGRV on hold. However, that matter is subject to a confidential item tonight for my performance review, and that is one of the KPIs. So with that going through, then we'll be able to look into the matter even further.
Okay. Got another one?
I have one more. Over the past few days, I've received, I think, also my fellow ward councillor, on a item which is Gidgee stock. Question is, will the CEO or the relevant officer advise if the upcoming Gidgee stock 3-day music festival from 8 to the 10th of October to be held at 64 Tree Change Rise, Gidgee Gannup, located in a quiet rural area, was approved by the city? If yes, can you advise what was the approval process? Was the community consulted, and were the ward councillors notified? If no, please advise on compliance action to be undertaken.
Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, I'm not aware of any of that, and I'm not getting an indication from any of the executives unless Mr Russell know. So we'll probably have to take that on notice.
Okay. Councillor Coley, your question.
Yes, in relation to Main Roads not supplying the Jacobs traffic study, is there a reason given, through you, Mayor, was there a reason given as to why they haven't supplied it or won't supply it?
Okay.
No.
Okay. Councillor Richardson, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To you or through staff, can you please advise the costings for the upcoming special meeting of council that was called early regarding the Vines Golf Course development to be held at Swan Valley Anglican Community School in the MPS?
I can't unless Mr CEO, you got
it? Yeah, Mr Mayor, we've got some indicative costings at this stage, but unfortunately the actual cost won't be known until post the event, and we're happy to provide those costings after the event. When all the invoices come in, then we'll know true cost of the event.
And will they be made public at that time too?
Happy to if Council wants that made public.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question relates to item 7.2, review of committees, and also the broader question of membership of associations. May I respectfully ask, through you, Mr Mayor, for the record, for the minutes, would those councillors who are members of the Liberal Party please identify themselves? Thank you.
They can if they wish. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Congleton.
Thank you.
Councillors, if we could have your question, please, Councillor Congleton.
Mr Mayor, I received today by email correspondence from Councillor Johnson in relation to caucusing. This is the second email I've received in relation to this very subject. And in the background component of this email, it makes reference to Councillor Johnson requested the council be provided with legal advice on the lawfulness of members of a political party voting together as a caucus on matters that came before council. Councillor Johnson is very concerned that certain councillors are engaging in this conduct and are voting on matters before council based on their political persuasion. Would Councillor Johnson please identify which of these items that you are suggesting caucusing has happened for the benefit of the public listening to this broadcast?
Referring to the most item 7.2 in this meeting, Councillor, and that legal advice came from our staff through you, Mr Mayor. And I still haven't had an answer to my first question.
So, Mr Mayor, the question I asked was, and hasn't been answered, is what councillors are engaging in this conduct and on what items?
I don't know, Councillor Johnson, you don't seem to have an answer for it.
Yeah, I think the answer is in the document you've received. So my question is in that, contained in that legal advice, and there's a response. So my question is, can those councillors who are members of the Liberal Party please identify themselves? Now, it shouldn't be anything to be ashamed of.
If they so wish to, they can. I can't order them to do it.
Again, Mr Mayor, Councillor Johnson is not answering the question, which is pretty typical of Councillor Johnson when he's boxed into a corner. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Any?
I'd like to answer for myself. I'm not a member of any political party.
Thank you. Right. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor McNamara.
Thank you. Is it not true, Mr Mayor, that I am not a member of a political party, that I'm a totally different colour of politics than anybody here on this left-hand side? Totally different. I might be more associated with the colour that's over here, right? But I vote according to my conscience and the individual items that comes up. End of story. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is that not true?
I don't know whether it's true or not. Councillor McNamara, you'll have to answer that question yourself. Thank you, councillors. That's going nowhere, sir, unless there's something pertinent.
Just one extra thing, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just for the record, I am not a member of a political party.
Thank you, councillor. Now move to leave of absence. Mr CEO, I have one from Councillor Podovnik from the 14th of September to the 24th of September. Are there any other leave of absence?
Mr Mayor, I have one further leave of absence from Councillor Parry. It's from the 12th to the 15th of October inclusive and the 1st of September as well.
Okay. Any other leave of absence? Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to put in a leave of absence from the 15th of September to the 18th. Thank you.
And Councillor Richard, I think I saw your hand as well.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It would just be the 15th, Wednesday the 15th of September.
Okay. And you'll put the forms into the CEO when you can. Thank you. No other requests? Thank you, councillors. I need a motion that they be accepted. Moved Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Zanino. Anyone against? Declare those approved. Confirmation of previous minutes of the July 28 meeting. I move that they be accepted. Anytime soon. Thank you, Councillor Parry. Seconded Councillor Jones. If there's no one against, to declare those carried. I also need one for the special meeting of the 11th of August 21. The minutes, Councillor Congleton as a mover, the seconder, Councillor Zanino. If there's no one against, we'll declare that carried. Now that takes us to items of business left over from previous meetings and 13.9, the Noongar Artwork Commission in Council Chambers, and a motion from Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll if councillors could note, there will be a change to the motion before them to further restrict the area available. The motion will be, one, to allocate $35,000 of the city's public art funding in the 22-23 year for the commission of a Noongar artwork for the council chamber. 2, locate the artwork on the council chamber wall. The available area for the chosen artist or artists to work within should be that area on the left rear wall when facing the mayoral seat, above the painted colour divide upon that wall, to any point above the doorway, including the space taken by the framed councillor images already in situ. And the other addition to that is...
I'll read your whole motion, Councillor.
There's just that addition to point 2, Mayor, sorry. It would be set down from the ceiling height to equal to or less than the level of the top of the City of Swan crest, which, for the benefit of those people watching at home, is behind the white projector screen. You can't see that at the moment. Number 3, note that it will be up to the chosen artist to decide on the area required within the limits outlined above, but is not required to occupy all of the available area. And 4, any proposed artwork must be prepared off-site and be capable of being transported and safely hung on the said wall. Number 5, advise the Reconciliation Action Plan Committee accordingly. And 6, record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is that the chosen artist should have a suitable area to work with, commensurate with the importance of what the artwork will represent.
Thank you, Councillor Colley. I have a seconder. Councillor Johnson, I think, was first. Is there anyone against? There's no one against. We'll get that carried. Now move to 310, which is the draft desktop heritage assessment for properties nominated in 2020. Need a mover and a second for the officer's recommendation. Moved Councillor Johnson, the seconder. Councillor Podovnik. Is anyone against? No one against. Declare that carried. Move to now 1311, the overwidth driveway at lot 139, number 12, Grampians Avenue, Janebrook. A motion from Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to approve the development application for an overwidth driveway at lot 139, number 12, Grampians Avenue, Janebrook, for the following reasons. 1, the house has a triple garage and the R-code standard driveway width of 6 metres is not wide enough. 2, it is possible that the R-codes did not anticipate triple garages in residential dwellings. And 3, the owner has 3 vehicles and also intends to park a trailer needed for his plumbing business.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Henderson. Is anyone against? Carried. Move to 312, Marshall Road, duplication, Beachborough Road, north to Drampellia. So I'll be calling for a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation, and then we go to your amendment. Okay, so mover for the officer's recommendation, Councillor McNamara. The seconder, Councillor Congerton, and I have an alternative, and I also have an amendment to that from Councillor Kiley. So, Councillor Kiley.
And just to be clear, this is a new process that we're following for amending motions, correct?
Yeah, amendments.
Simple amendments.
Yeah, amendments. Yeah. So it's amendment to the officer's recommendation.
My amendment relates to point 3, undertake the following actions as part of the design process. A, not support the use of pre-deflections on the above roundabout. And B, meet with Main Roads, WA, Metronet and landowners whose property's access is impacted by the above roundabout with an objective of facilitating suitable access from Marshall Road to these properties. And C, demonstrate how safe pedestrian and cyclist access can be achieved across Beachborough Road North and Marshall Road to link the Bennett Springs residential area with the future Metronet station to the north.
Seconder. Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against the amendment? There is. We wish to debate it. Okay. Councillor Coley.
Mayor, this will make, if we remove the pre-deflections off that roundabout where pedestrian and cyclist movements are occurring or will occur, it will provide a clear line of sight for a vehicle moving to that roundabout to be able to see any pedestrian or cyclist crossing over that roundabout or nearby that roundabout. If the driver's concentration is taken off the pedestrian movement or the cyclist movement at that roundabout, then we're presenting a danger to that individual. I think it's better for pedestrian movement and cyclists that the driver can focus directly ahead and not worry about having to swerve left, having to swerve right and left and so forth again to get through that roundabout. So this would be a safety aspect in one respect. The other reason for it is that the access to the properties north of Marshall Road and west of Bennett's Beachborough Road North would be easier to achieve off Marshall Road if there were no pre-deflections. It would provide for greater room for either a side lane or some other slip lane to get off Marshall Road into those properties to the north of Marshall Road. So it serves two purposes. It's a safety aspect, and it also serves to provide access to the properties which in time will be developed, and would prefer that they would maintain access to the south of those properties.
Okay. Seconder?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I actually have a more fundamental objection to pre-deflections that I'd like to outline here. Pre-deflections are in effect, as we discussed during the agenda for most chicanes. They are designed to present, in effect, a minor hazard to the driver to make the driver slow down. But in my opinion, such a chicane or pre-deflection is not needed, as the need to slow down prior to the roundabout, it should be either obvious to the driver when they see the roundabout and they can use the brake, or there can be a signpost or speed limit changes or flashing lights or rumble strips or marks on the road indicating there's a roundabout coming. I think that would be far cheaper and far safer than putting in a chicane. Putting in pre-deflection, which is quite a serious curve, in my view is potentially unsafe when approaching a roundabout, because braking on a curve is not as safe as braking on a straight. And in addition, when you're approaching a roundabout, ideally you should be travelling in a straight line so that you can be looking at the roundabout and looking to the right to determine what is coming, rather than looking at this rather strange road configuration. Your eyes should be focused on the traffic around you, rather than having to worry about, well, this is a bit of an unusual road here, how do I drive around this? The third item is, coming from a country of roundabouts, being a migrant, I never saw a pre-deflection on a roundabout in the United Kingdom, and I don't believe they ever would be. And when I had a quick look to see what the current standards are in the UK, lo and behold, there is no mention whatsoever of pre-deflections when I look in CD 116 geometric design of roundabouts. Now, I've also read the Australian standard, and yes, it does include pre-deflections for roads above a certain speed, but I think sometimes when you get standards, you need to stop and think, do I need to apply it? I understand they're mandatory, but I don't understand, I know what mandatory means. Does it mean we absolutely have to do it, or is it something that we have to consider? So I think we need to take a step back at this point and say, are these pre-deflections the right thing for us to do? And the fourth reason why we need to think about this is we've seen many of these pre-deflection roundabouts come before council. And for everyone, there's always a need to buy more land, and I think there is on this occasion as well. So basically, we have to buy more land. That makes it more expensive. And in addition, the design is more complex. The design is more expensive, and the actual construction and build is more expensive. So that's my reason for supporting Councillor Carter's motion. I believe we really need to reconsider pre-deflections and only use them when they're absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor McNamara against the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Some time ago, Councillor Rod Henderson and myself were totally against pre-deflections from the point of view there was something happening, they were new, so basically we were used, just like Councillor Johnson has said, he comes from a place where there's no pre-deflections. We were advised by Mr Corton that there were a safety issue. The safety issue has been proven to me, in particular. I'll let Councillor Henderson speak for himself, but they've been proven to me to be a safety issue from the point of view of the rules of the road expect you coming to a roundabout, to know you're coming to a roundabout, to slow down, right, and to take care going into a roundabout. Roundabouts are such a thing, Mr. Mayor, that I don't think probably 60% of the Australian drivers have no idea how to use a roundabout. Have no idea. That's my view. But, Mr. Mayor, it's a safety issue. Pre-deflections. I also come from a country, as I said, that has no you look straight through and you can see what's happening at the other side of the roundabout. You can also see what's happening from your right. You're supposed to give way to traffic approaching from the right in this particular country, but when you veer left, you are actually creating a situation, a safety situation, where you are not going to be completely by oncoming traffic on your right. If you do happen to make a mistake, and we all fall asleep at the wheel every now and then. So if you actually, well, your time will come, let me guarantee. The issue is, Mr. Mayor, that it is a safety issue. It is a rule in this country that there is deflections, pre-deflections going into roundabout, and we have to abide by that. This is a design that is created by engineers in our country, not in the UK, Ireland, or any place else in Europe. It is Australia we're talking about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There's a question, Councillor Catalano.
It's a question to Mr. Coton. Will the chicanes, and I think it was raised a bit last week, but I just really want to have it clarified as much as possible. Will the chicanes impact upon pedestrian and cyclist access from Bennett Springs or even Beachborough Road going up to the railway station? Will the chicanes...
Mr. Coton?
Yes, the pre-deflections are used to improve pedestrian safety, so they will impact. They'll make it the pre-deflections will make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists to cross. That's one of the reasons why Main Roads recommend them. So the traffic will slow down, which will make it easier give more time for the pedestrians and cyclists to cross. So yes, it's a safety benefit to them.
Okay. Councillor Scanlon, you got a question?
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Coton, I'd just like to ask if we know yet what the speed limit will be in this area of Marshall Road.
Mr. Coton?
Well, the speed is set by Main Roads. That may be reviewed as part of the process. There's not a speed review. So I'm at the moment at 70 coming in there. If pre-deflections weren't included, then there would be a case to perhaps look at lowering the speed limit to make it safer. The disadvantage of that, of course, would be more congestion. But and again, that's the sort of thing that will be determined through the design process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I need a speaker for. Speaker against, Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commentary around chicanes. I don't see this as a chicane. I know what a chicane is, and this isn't a description of a chicane. So I think I need to make that clear in my head. Any roundabout on any street, we have one in Ballajura, which is Marangaroo and Illawarra. Illawarra is 50 k's and Marangaroo is 70 k's. And I can't tell you the number of cars that have driven straight over that entire middle of that roundabout and gone through, dug it all up and continued on and left a trail of destruction behind. And that goes on a number of occasions through standard roundabouts. I only wish there was a deflection process involved on Marangaroo. Coming back to the question, there was a meeting of council to defer this item, as you may recall, to meet with the affected landowners and the city staff, which was attended by Councillor Kiley, myself, Councillor Henderson, city staff, the landowners and their consultants. And at that meeting, I think was probably around an hour a bit long, at that meeting, it was agreed that the recommendation you have from the officers now was the agreed process. Everybody went away understanding that was the agreed process as coming to this council. You might shake your head as much as you like, Councillor, it was agreed. And now we have a change of view. The council resolution, officer's resolution, clearly states under number 3, which it says, undertake the following actions as part of the design process. Review the need for pre-deflections on the above roundabout. So at some stage through this design criteria, it is going to be a review of the need of the pre-deflections, which is the main roads standard code, I might add, for this type of development. So I don't know why we're preempting now the review process for pre-deflections by saying, no, we don't want a pre-deflection. So if you adopt the change of the recommendation, then does that then negate then the review? It's just gone, it's finished. So I don't know why we're not sticking to the plan that was agreed to on the day, and it was on the day, and everybody went away and said, okay, we're happy with this now, because it was debated for some time. So I can't support it, Councillor Conklin.
Thank you, Councillor Conklin. Speaker for motion. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of points I'd like to make. In my youth, I rode dirt bikes and larger bikes, and one of the things that you can't have happen to you is to try and change your direction rapidly when you're actually going the other way. It's one of those centrifugal things that's awful hard. Ultimately, it means you end up going over the edge. And as you know, I have opposed I use the word chicane, Councillor Conklin, because it's rather more interesting word than pre-deflectors, but in any case, I accept the point. But councillors, the other thing is that one of the reasons that the British report recommends against them is because they get a lot of ice on their roads. Well, we actually get ice on our roads too, because my Honda, when I'm driving along and it's freezing cold, it pops up a little note saying, hey, watch out for ice. So, it's telling me that there could be ice on the road. So the point I want to get to about pre-deflectors, if you, I can see your point, Mr Mayor, you want to get me back on track, is that I don't believe that they are safe for bike riders in particular, but in fact they are not so safe for cars either. In terms of an island refuge, we all would have an island refuge for pedestrians in any case without them. So I don't believe it makes it any safer for pedestrians because part of the design is to have a refuge for them. And the other issues is that currently I think 70k speed limit in one direction, east-west, and I think 60k's north-south off the top of my head. So there's probably going to be a review of the speed limits there, but the need for pre-deflectors or chicanes, if you wish, at higher speeds is clear, has been identified, and lower speeds you don't necessarily need them because people are actually going slower to be able to access the intersection. Point about Australian standards. You could talk Australian standards all day, and much of that is all around insurance and making sure that you cover yourself as much as possible. Well, quite clearly the officers are already recommending that we have a look at that question, so it makes you think, well, do we really have to have them per Australian standards? Well, not necessarily, I don't think. It's a matter of the risk to ensure that we've got a safe access for our travelling public. I think this is an opportunity to say, let's get back to it. Let's not take so much land off people that own land. Let's not pay more ratepayers' money for land that's not necessarily needed. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I'll try and keep this as brief as I can, councillors, but thank you, Councillor Johnson, for sending me the UK standards for highways and roundabouts. I read about 150 of 169 pages last night, and it's true. They do not use the word in their documentation pre-deflection. It's not used at all. But what they do say is deflecting approaching vehicles by using physical and non-physical deflection islands on the approach arms of a roundabout. So I mean approach arm, I gather that's the road leading to it, different terminology. They use lorries, we say trucks, we say motorbikes and scooters and mopeds, they say two-wheeled powered vehicles. So on the approaching arm of a roundabout, the reason they want to deflect the vehicle traffic is to slow it down, to separate, to direct and deflect and separate traffic towards the roundabout. The principal objective of a roundabout is to minimise delay for vehicles whilst maintaining safe passage of all road users through the junction. This is achieved by a combination of geometric layout features that are ideally matched to the flows of the traffic streams, their speed, and any local topographical or other constraints such as land availability that apply. Location constraints are often the dominating factor when designing improvements to existing junctions, particularly in urban areas. As you'd all appreciate, the UK's population is almost 3 times that of Australia and many, many more times that of Western Australia, and they haven't got as much land as we've got. So traffic islands may be provided as a calming feature. They don't say pre-deflection, they say traffic islands. Curbed islands designed to narrow the carriageway and prior to the giveaway line of a mini roundabout may be used as a traffic calming feature to control the speed of approaching traffic. They go into all these wonderful diagrams called double donuts and hamburgers, different terminology. But under the definition of deflection, 5.17 on page 82, deflection or other means of slowing vehicles on approaching to give way to the stop line shall be provided on a roundabout. And note 2, both the speed and path of the vehicle through a roundabout are important factors in incident causation. Adequate deflection allows for approaching drivers to be aware of the circulatory nature of the junction ahead. Drivers need to be ready to stop if necessary on the approach, so it is essential entry speeds are managed by careful design. That's all I'm going to say about the UK. Had a read, very interesting. What I do want us to pay attention is WA Main Roads. They're our engineers. A retrospective one, I'll just touch on this one first, was in the city of Wanneroo at the intersection of Coondoola and Hollingworth Avenue, and they retrofitted pre-deflections to a roundabout that didn't have it because of safety issues on the number of accidents at higher speed which was causing before the pre-deflections went in, and there's the diagram of how they did it. So just to finish off, this is what Main Roads say in their compliance with the guidelines, and that's all they are, they're guidelines. So whilst there is no compulsion to comply with the recommendation of these guidelines, practitioners are urged to carefully consider these guidelines before proceeding with alternative practices. The erection, modification or removal of traffic control devices involves changing the road environment, and this requires practitioners to meet any applicable statutory obligations and the common law of duty of care. The city, those last few words, the city would be liable for deviating from the guidelines if an incident was to occur because we haven't followed the standard recommendations that Main Roads. On their same document, where not to use a roundabout. So they give you pros and cons. But this says when not to use a roundabout. Where satisfactory geometry cannot be provided due to insufficient space or other constraints where proper deflection cannot be achieved to reduce speeds. So if we're not going to reduce the speed approaching that intersection by using pre-deflections, then we shouldn't be building a roundabout.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Have I used my 5 minutes?
And a few seconds extra.
Well, I just want to finish off.
I'll give you a couple more seconds.
Yuildene and Drumpilia, Park Road and Drumpilia, Sunflower and Lord Street, West Swan Road and Millhouse Road, Nangara and Western Swan Road, Marshall Road and Dulwich all have pre-deflectors. They slow vehicles down and when you're moving slower, you actually see more, and people wanting to cross the road have got a better idea how to judge how fast a vehicle is approaching, so it is safer for pedestrians and cyclists. So
Thank you,
I'll say no more.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Any other speakers for or against? In case Councillor Kiley, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll probably just clear up one point that Councillor Congdon raised, and that's the difference between the motion I've put forward, or the amendment I've put forward, and what took place at the meeting. I took the opportunity to speak. We heard from Potter's Church representative that they had no problem with the motion as it's written, but I took the opportunity to speak to the consultant, acting on behalf of the landowner on the corner, the northwest corner. Now, their preference would be that we did not support the use of pre-deflections on that, and to explain that meeting, I felt that was the motion that we ended up with was somewhat of a compromise position, having exited the meeting. So, but the actual preference for the landowner there, the affected landowner, who has current rights to access his property from the south, will be affected by installation, or most likely be affected by the installation of pre-deflections. So their preference was to not support them. However, in the original motion, the officer recommendation to review the need for the pre-deflections on the above roundabout will still be there and be maintained in that motion. But the crux of this matter, councillors, is that there's a landowner who has existing access rights to his property there, and the addition of pre-deflections coming from the west will most likely affect his access to his properties, or ensure that more of the land that they own will have to be given up for the access. So this removal of the pre-deflection, particularly from the west, will ensure that they maintain their access to their property. And as Councillor Lucas pointed out, that does provide for alternative practices. It's in the design process, and we are going into a design process. It can be looked into. My amendment would be not to support the use of. It wouldn't be to rule them out 100%. It still has to be designed, but the intent from this council, and that's what I'm asking you to support, would be not to support the pre-deflections. I cannot understand how someone travelling at 70 kilometres an hour and going through a chicane type movement would be a safe outcome for pedestrians and cyclists. I just cannot see that. I think if a well-designed roundabout would ensure that cars had to slow down if the circle in the middle was wide enough, and maybe if we had a big beautiful tree in the middle, that would provide a bit of a focal point too as well. But it's in all likelihood we are going to have pedestrian and cyclist movements on every juncture to that roundabout in the future going forward. So I think that it's a well-designed roundabout could ensure that safe pedestrian movement could occur without the pre-deflections. There simply isn't enough room, and Councillor Lucas pointed to that issue, that if there's not enough room in the area, that the design should incorporate, maybe not incorporate pre-deflections at all, or maybe move to a set of lights, which was talked about.
Point of order, that's not what I said, Mr Mayor.
Well, have you got long to go? Because I've already let you go a little bit over time. So.
I'm already over time. Okay, so I'm asking you to not support the pre-deflection. It does not mean that when we end up with the final design that they won't be there, but at the moment I ask you to, for the benefit of the landholders there, that you don't support the pre-deflections.
Thank you. Well, we've just closed debate, John, too.
Explain, Mayor. What we heard from last week, we heard from the representative of Potter's House, who had no problem with the officer recommendation, but the property to the east side, right on the corner, the affected property there, would prefer that the pre-deflection didn't.
Okay, councillors, we've finished the debate question, so now I'm going to put it to the vote. Okay, now I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? The amendment, that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Therefore, it fails. Councillor Johnson, yours falls away also because it's basically the same. We've developed that. I have a mover and a second for the officer's recommendation. Is there anyone against? Be no one against. We declare that carried. You're against? Okay. And we used to debate it over again? No? In that case, okay. I'll put a vote. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 votes carried. Now move to Part B of the agenda, and the first item is 4.1, consideration of submissions to amendment number 132, the Local Planning Scheme 17, to modify the boundaries and scheme provisions of the Western Swamp Tortoise Special Use Zone. Motion from Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, my motion is to defer consideration of proposed amendment number 132 to the City of Swan Local Planning...
Councillor, I just need to wind back. We missed a process, so if you... Sorry about that. Councillors, of the items that are not withdrawn, I move that they be moved on block. And 4.5 needs to come out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so councillors, on there in Part B, you have those being moved on block. 4.5, the staff are going to withdraw, and the CEO can explain that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 4.5, councillors, we've decided to withdraw from the agenda, and that's that we're just investigating further refinement of the infrastructure design and costings that may further reduce some of the DCP costs. So we've decided, whilst we're still going through that refinement, that we'll withdraw the item. Staff will then continue to do those costings, and it'll come back to council at a later date and then be advertised.
Thank you, Mr CEO. I move, councillors, that those not withdrawn. Councillor Parry. Second to Councillor Jones. There's no one against. We'll declare those carried. My apologies, Councillor Coley. We'll get back to you.
That's fine, Mayor. Thank you. My motion, councillors, is to defer consideration of proposed amendment number 132 to the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme number 17 to the ordinary meeting of Council of 17 November 21, and 2, advise the applicant, affected landowners and those whom lodged a submission of Council's resolution. Do I need a reason?
Yes.
Yep. The reason would be to permit further time to consult with landowners in the area to understand further the implications of the scheme amendment.
I have a seconder. Councillor Catalano. Is there anyone against? There is. Going to debate it? No, in that case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Motion carried. Move to 4.3, proposed amendment to number 204, Local Planning Scheme number 17, Bellevue Precinct 6, General Commercial to Residential R20, R40, and motion from Councillor Johnson.
We're following the new procedure, Mr Mayor, so...
Yeah, my apologies. Thank you, Councillor. Call for a mover and a seconder to the officer's recommendation. Move it over seconder. Okay. Councillor Kiley, and I have an amendment from Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. My proposed amendment is to insert at Part 1B and subsequently renumber B, rezone Todd Park Lot 1 Raisin Parade Bellevue and Todd Park Lot 500 Raisin Parade Bellevue from residential R20 to local reserve recreation, and record the reason for the amendment as 1. Todd Park is an established park in Bellevue, commemorating a soldier who died in the First World War, yet it is currently zoned R20 residential. The correct zoning for a park should be local reserve recreation. 3. This change is needed to protect the park. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Seconder, Councillor Scanlon. Is there anyone against the amendment? There is. We'll debate it. Councillor?
Very briefly.
Okay.
And I apologise, Councillor Johnson. I meant to have spoken to him earlier.
Hang on. You're going to debate it? Councillor Johnson needs to open the debate.
Yeah.
I thought as the mover I got the right to open the debate.
Nope, I'm moving an amendment.
No, we're talking about the amendment.
Yes, so I'm moving the amendment. During the agenda forum, I noticed to my surprise, and I have not actually got the page number here, but it looks like if we turn to page 357, you'll see on the map at page 363, you'll notice that where it says Helen Street in the diagram at the top, directly above the H and the E, there is an area marked off, and it is zoned R20. So this piece of land, zoned R20, is a City of Swan park. It contains grass, well, at least in the winter, trees, there is a park bench, a small path, and a memorial to Captain Todd. So it is a well-established, long-established city park. I think in the past there was actually a hotel there, but it is clearly a park, and it should be zoned as such. The Bellevue Land Use Study has been endeavouring to correct and modify the anomalous zoning within the remaining residential area of Bellevue. Councillors, during the agenda forum, I was really rather surprised to find that that piece of land there, marked at R20, was zoned R20, and I think we have verified that it is R20. So therefore, I think to carry through the actual intent of the Bellevue Land Use Study, we need to ensure that our parks in Bellevue, and there are not a lot of parks in Bellevue, should be zoned local reserve recreation. We have had a bit of a history in Bellevue of losing reserve land. I can think the Good Child Oval on Wilkins Road comes to mind. I think we need to protect all of the parkland that we have, and as this is an established park, and as this is coming up now, I'd like to take this opportunity to carry out what I believe is the intention of the Bellevue Land Use Study. So basically it's an anomaly I noticed, councillors, during the agenda forum, so I'm changing it now, and I've not had any advice from the officers that this is that it's not zoned R20, so presumably it is. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Scanlon is the seconder.
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lucas speaking against the motion.
Speaking against the amendment. I fully agree with everything you said, Councillor Johnson, but I don't want to get what we previously had of rezoning those former two lots from residential to commercial or commercial to residential. Now we've got a mismatch. We're now trying to add extra things on, which I can see it getting a bit too complicated. I fully support the Bellis Land Use Study and what we're trying to do under this amendment. I think that should go through unaffected, and then, as a separate issue, a separate item, come back to council. That can be done with the on a to-do list with the scheme review that's coming up early next year. But I believe that by adding the two together, it could cause problems, particularly for the precinct we're trying to go from commercial to residential on those two properties. By trying to add another two properties in, I can see it perhaps getting bogged down and not going the way we want it to. So my understanding is that Lot 500 is state-owned and it's invested in the city as a reserve, and Lot 1 is freehold, and it's always been used as a park since the early turn of the or since the 1920s of last century. So I think I would like, from my point of view, go the officer's recommendation and then deal with the park issue as a separate one, because I can see issues coming up and it will just delay the original intention of the review of the local planning scheme. Thank you.
Question, Councillor Colley.
Can I get a direction from staff or the CEO as to the best means to deal with the issues presented?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, council can do it either way here. I think the salient thing is if the concern, it's quite correct, it is an anomaly to have a piece of land that is under a management order with the city zoned in contravention of its actual status as a reserve. But all that means, I suppose, is there's no danger in any way, shape or form that I can see that the zoning of the land, which is the lot 500, there is no danger, in my opinion, that lot 500, as under a management order, could be disposed of by this council on the basis of its zoning. That simply doesn't countermand the fact that it's Crown land vested for care, control and management. So there's no danger of that. In relation to adjoining lot 1, which was created with the city's interest in freehold under a certificate of title issued in 1986, and it would have been as part of a land adjustment, and probably under the Land Administration Act at the time. Whilst that is freehold and it is zoned, as has been remarked, it's clearly been integrated, probably by deliberate intent. And if we looked at the minutes, Mr Mayor, going back to the mid-80s, you'll probably find an express council resolution. It's obviously been designed and incorporated into the park as a whole, even though the reserve is only lot 500. Certainly, there is no danger, I think, of this land being lost to the community by way of some disposal, which simply couldn't happen in the instance of changing the management order without going through that process. We have seen this in the past. We've had instances, and there was one this year where we had an amendment in for land in Hazelmere, where a proponent requested that the amendment be split, so parcels of land be split from not being a singular amendment, but into two separate amendments for precisely the reasons the Deputy Mayor's articulated, that you could bog down an amendment by introducing something else that may have other consequences or implications that might not be foreseen at this time, the collateral effect being that it might delay the desired and hopefully swift implementation of the amendment to implement the desires of the community with the Ballas study. So, look, you can do it either way, but certainly I think as an anomaly, when we do the scheme review, we're going to be going through and picking up these little errors or oversights that don't have any real implication at the moment, but tidying those up to say if we've got land that is a reserve, then we can certainly change lot 500 to it being designated under the scheme as a local reserve. And look, it's up to the council whether it wants to dispose of a freehold interest in land by way of giving it back to the state formally and having it then revested. That's the other part one. It can do all of that, but there are complicated processes around that could have the effect of slowing it. If the question is what's my recommendation, Mr Mayor, my recommendation would be perhaps to leave it as a separate matter and deal with it in the manner that's been articulated as a separate amendment to come back, or deal with it at the scheme review.
Thanks. Mr Russell.
Follow-up, Mayor, then would Councillor Johnson be approve the idea of bringing it back to, or would he be able to bring it back to the next meeting then,
well,
separately?
I don't think so, not by the way he's shaking his head. Okay, so back to where we were. Is there a speaker for the motion? Any other speakers against? Close her up, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, councillors, look, this is, as I said before, fixing an anomaly. As Mr Russell says, we can do it either way, so we can do it like this. And the reason for doing it like this is actually there are concerns in the Bellevue and Congamai area about the disposal of land. So the two that come to mind straight away are on Wilkins Street, which is not so very far from here. In fact, I think, yeah, Wilkins Street is just south of Clayton Road there. The city sold Goodchild Oval, which was an important part of the Bellevue community.
Could I just remind you, you're actually closing debate, not introducing new debate.
I'm not doing it. I'm just responding to comment that's been made.
The actual debates.
No, I am. I'm answering the question about is it likely that public parks are going to be sold, and the answer is yes. Goodchild Oval was sold, I think, just before I got on council. An Astroloma Place, which is in Congamai, just a few hundred metres away, I think, perhaps a kilometre away, was also sold, and we currently have an action going on to try to recover that. There are other areas in Bellevue, which I believe, which don't come to mind, which were public open space and which have been sold. So my reason for moving it now is for reasons of protecting this this important park. So councillors, as Mr Russell says, we can do it either way. So therefore, we might as well do it now because it'll reduce the amount of work for council and the WAPC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Now put the vote. Those in favour? 10-5. Motion is carried. Now move to 4.7, which is State Administrative Tribunal reconsideration of the refusal of short stay accommodation.
Just the amendment.
Oh, sorry. Yep, you are correct. So that is the amendment. Now that becomes part of the motion. I have a mover and a seconder. Is anyone against the amended motion? In that case, we'll declare that carried. Thank you. 4.7 is the State Administrative Tribunal reconsideration of the refusal of short stay accommodation at lot 166, 149 Caspian Way, Brigadoon. I need a mover for the recommendation and a seconder. Move Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Scanlon, and I have an amendment from Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I had circulated a proposal, but after further discussion, the motion will be adjusted. So part one of the motion is operation of the short stay accommodation is limited to 2 years from the date of approval. The operation of short stay accommodation must not be operated after this period unless otherwise approved by the city. And then number 2 would become the pool area and entertainment room shall not be used by guests between the hours of 10:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. and between 12:30 a.m. and 7 a.m. on New Year's Eve. 4, the operation of the short stay accommodation must be undertaken in accordance with the short stay accommodation management plan dated 10th of June 2021. The reason for the change, the management plan details the number of guests, minimum booking days and other management commitments.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Zanino, is there anyone against?
Amendment to the amendment, Mayor.
Well,
if I could.
Hang on, we've already got an amendment, so we need to deal with that first.
Can I just see it on the screen? Because I don't know what's been deleted.
Yeah, I know, it's fairly significantly different.
Mayor, if I could, I know Councillor Henderson's dying to find out what the change was, but it was to bring it back to council rather than the city. Councillor?
Yes, it's only a 2-year approval, and after that, it would
Bring it back to the council rather than the officers.
Well, it's only a 2-year approval, so after that time it would lapse, and they'd have to make another application.
Councillors, we just don't get into debate. Here you go, Meeks. Where are you with that? You happy with that as it's on the board, Councillor? Okay. You got a question?
Yeah, question, Mr. Mayor. Is that a typo on line 1 there where it says limited to 1 brackets 2?
Okay. So now I've got obviously a mover from Councillor Henderson, and as Councillor Zanino is a seconder. Is there anyone against that amendment? You are. Okay.
Just that one point, Mayor, that I want to brought back to the council, not to the city.
Okay, righto. Now, is there anyone against? In that case, that becomes part of the motion. I've got a mover and a second. Is there anyone against the amended motion? In that case, that carried. Okay, well, in that case, we record that Councillor Lucas is against, but doesn't wish to debate it. So there is carried.
Go back to what you lost me completely. Did you change it to the council?
Yeah, he agreed to that. So no, we cancel. Okay. Councillors, now we move to 4.9, amended conditions number 2 to extend the term of approval for DA 00621, temporary sea container and bar at lot 26, 9810 West Swan Road, Henley Brook. Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I move that the Council resolve to, 1, recommend that the Swan Valley Statutory Planning Committee refuse the request to amend Condition 2 to extend the term of approval for the proposed temporary sea container bar for a period of 12 months at lot 26, number 9810 West Swan Road, Henley Brook, for the following reason. 1, extending the period of use of a sea container as part of the expansion of the Henley Brook Tavern is not considered to be consistent with the rural character and amenity of the locality.
Seconder. Councillor Kiley. Is anyone against? Good. Councillor Scanlon's against. You wish to debate it? Briefly. Okay. Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I'll just bring to the attention of the Council that I don't think anyone is actually against the facility having an alternative bar. The problem arises when they want to use a sea container as a makeshift bar. And what I'll say is that the following information was given when the application was lodged, and they basically said the sole reason to install the temporary sea container bar in an outdoor setting was to assist in complying with COVID-19 social distancing requirements. Also, the application did not seek to increase the existing capacity of the venue. And 3, the sea container bar will be located on the site until the 14th of June 2021, after which date the development would be dismantled and removed from the site entirely, in its entirety. Now, councillors, that was back then when COVID was rampant and there were restrictions put in place. Right now, well, Perth and Peel are no longer subject to post-lockdown restrictions and are under the same restrictions as the rest of Western Australia. All hospitality venues can operate at full capacity. There's no capacity limits. So therefore, this removes the prime reason for the temporary sea container to remain on site. If the proponents see an ongoing benefit to having an exterior bar, then they should be encouraged to apply to construct appropriate permanent structure to the facility to facilitate that need. And I'm quite sure that if they did put an application, it would be approved. But to retain the eyesore of a sea container is not acceptable. Therefore, I am urging Council to support this recommendation and for it to go forward.
Councillor Kiley is the seconder.
Nothing further to add.
Okay. Councillor Scanlon speaking against the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason I've objected to this is simply because we don't know when COVID restrictions will come back into play in WA, and I believe we should be supporting the Swan Valley businesses to survive through that. So the Henley Brook Tavern informed me they don't own the sea container and it will be taken back by the owners at some point. It's not to become a permanent fixture. They'd just like the opportunity to have it in place for a little bit longer until COVID may settle down. We don't know if it may come back into WA any moment and we may be back to restrictions. It's just to allow them to have an outdoor area that they can serve guests from to maintain a capacity of service. So I'd just like to ask Council to allow them to continue just for a little bit longer to ensure they can maintain their business throughout this difficult time. Thank you.
Councillor Scanlon. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. For years, we've been trying to protect the Swan Valley. We used to do it under the old legislation, Swan Valley Planning Act, some 20-odd years old. When we made a determination, we would appeal to the SAT and were usually overruled. But now we've entered a new era from the 6th of August. We've now got the new Swan Valley Planning Scheme. And from the deputation given to us by the Swan Valley Tourism Alliance, I'll just read briefly one paragraph. Sea containers have regularly been refused as structures used for other than storage within Swan Valley legislated precinct. A recent example of this refusal is by cancel of the Elmar's Brewery application. With the commencement of the new Swan Valley Planning Scheme, number 1, approvals for sea containers are now more restrictive and approval is based only on storage. We're directed to look at Schedule 5, Item 2.6 of the Swan Valley Planning Scheme. So we've now had legislation introduced at state level and we're recommending against it because this sea container is not for storage. It's to be used as a bar. If the proprietors of the Henley Brook want to put a bar in, then they should make a right application and build a second bar, not put it in a sea container, which is against the new scheme, so I can't support it. Thank you.
Speaker against, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, looking at this, as Councillor Scanlon has already spoken to this, in light of our restrictions, this temporary sea container is going to continue assisting in complying down the track if we look at further COVID mitigation and risk. We've seen what's happening over East, and I think just to be flexible to allow such a sea container continue to operate as it is, as a bar, is fairly practical. We see the Henley Brook as a rural-style eatery that provides some great activation for our Swan Valley and our tourism. I have spoken to so many people that have visited that business with the flow-on of business to so many wineries across and through the Swan Valley that's something to keep in mind. And under our Swan Valley Planning Scheme, this land is zoned priority agriculture, so this temporary sea container bar is considered an extension to the existing tavern within the zone. Retaining that temporary sea container just for an additional 12 months is not going to have an adverse impact on rural character. It's set back in excess of 43 metres to a lot boundaries, and it's located amongst existing mature vegetation. The development is screened from West Swan Road by landscaping in accordance with condition number 3 of the original approval. And the proposed colour of the development is the dark Dulux Domino grey, and it's very pertinent to the Swan Valley with those colours that blend into the landscape. It's a natural tone and it complements the surroundings. And there were no objections received during consultation periods from adjoining landowners or interest groups. So, councillors, I think this is something that we can do. It's something that we can afford, and we are not completely post-COVID, so it's something that we need to be open-minded with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Speaker.
I've just got a quick point of order, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor McCulloch said there was no objection from interest groups. I believe we've had objections from the Swan Valley Tourism Alliance, and they've made 2 deputations last week at the agenda forum about it. So.
Okay. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I would have to say there's been no one more supportive than myself for the Henley Brook, its operation, and the tourism business that it's brought into the Swan Valley. It has been truly an amazing place and very, very successful, albeit that it doesn't have any agriculture. We know that. It's one of the things that you can't have anymore, by the way, under the new Act, unless you've got clear agricultural activity. And the key thing about the clear agricultural activity is that you've got to demonstrate its sustainability, and it's going to be there as the key aspect of your land rather than the minor aspect. So some of the taverns that we have don't meet that, but that was in the past Act. So given that, but also given the fact that we're seeing a proliferation of sea containers all over the place, many of them are placed in situations that are quite much of an eyesore, to be blunt, and part and parcel of the new Act is that you want a sea container, it's X, you can't have it. So we've got to say to ourselves, okay, how do we move forward? Well, I think the best way to move forward here is for them, as mentioned, is for them to apply to have an out bar of some kind. That'd be fantastic. I'd support that, providing it was built properly and had the right theme about it. Across the road, we've got another tavern, so it's very significant. Both of them combined are a very significant tavern go-to places, no doubt about that. But we've got to see things developed in a way that's going to promote the place, to make it look good. Sea containers, regrettably, are a quick fix. Excuse me. As a sea container is, people are actually getting sea containers and putting them in as rentals in the valley with a house inside of a 20-foot container, of a bed, a sink and a toilet, because the cheap rent. That sort of stuff has got to be stopped, and that's why there is a very significant desire to see sea container use stopped, and this is one that I would normally not draw the line on, but with the new Act and for a new direction, I have to do that. Thank you.
Speaker for or Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, just quickly, there were comments from fellow councillors about restrictions. There are no restrictions at the moment, so they don't apply. COVID has settled, and there have been numerous objections with regards to this development. The development is in a zoning which is Swan Valley Planning Zone 1, and it's zoned as priority agriculture. If this development was not there and they applied to build this development under the new Act, it would be totally refused, because it would be X use, because they have a block which is 62,376 square metres, and there is no agriculture whatsoever on the property. Sea containers are not considered to reflect the rural character expected within the legislated precinct, and further, the attempt to screen the container did not achieve the desired result of reducing the visual impact from West Swan Road. In fact, the use of the white lattice only made the structure more visible, and the end of the container can still be seen from West Swan Road. So they made no real attempt to screen it and do anything with it. If they wanted to, their application lapsed on the 14th of June. They could have had a new application with the City of Swan. It would have been approved, and by now they could have had a brand new bar built to replace it, in case there are future restrictions. Councillors, they have no, in my opinion, desire to do anything with it. They're just hoping to get another 12 months, and in 12 months' time, they'll probably ask for another 12 months. I ask you to support this recommendation.
Thank you. Now put the motion. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. 12, 4 and 3 against. It's carried. Then move to item 411, a sea container, shade structure and lunchroom, lot 128, number 104 Swan Street, Henley Brook, and a motion from Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, my motion is short. It's to recommend that the Swan Valley Statutory Planning Committee refuse the application for sea containers, shade structures and a lunchroom at lot 128, number 104 Swan Street, Henley Brook, for the following reason. The structures would, number one, the structures would detract from the rural character and amenity of the locality.
Seconder, Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? There's no one against. Declare carried. Now moving to 5.1, the secondary access road to Shady Hills, Bullsbrook. I need a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation firstly. Move to Councillor Parry, seconded to Councillor Jones, and a proposed amendment from Councillor McCulloch.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Adding part 9 as follows. In the event that an agreement with the landowners is not possible for whatever reason, that the City undertake the design and construction of the road to an appropriate standard, utilising the state government funding of $1.9 million and including the $3.1 million on the draft capital budget for 22-23 to complete the project. Recording the reason for the amendment is to ensure that the road is constructed to address the bushfire risk.
Seconder. Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Okay. Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, the current situation is that the secondary access road has been discussed in Shady Hills for a number of years. There's only one way in and there's only one way out. We've now had a number of fires that have threatened Shady Hills, including the devastating Wooroloo fires of February earlier this year. As you're aware, the fire was contained on the boundary of Shady Hills. It was a very stressful evening for many, and I remember it well. And one of our local Bullsbrook female fire volunteers had taken some fairly awful photos of the fire at the bottom of the valley and ready to encroach on Shady Hills. And I can tell you that the terror and the concern amongst that community was quite significant. Anyway, the fire was contained on the boundary of Shady Hills that evening, thanks in part to nearly 700,000 litres of fire retardant being dropped in that area that evening. Had the fire got through, and we hadn't seen that 700,000 litres and those planes come from the east at perfect timing, we would have had significant losses in Shady Hills, and the winds that evening were devastating. So Shady Hill includes streets like Shady Hills View, Gibbard Road and Smith Road, as you would be aware. All of those roads can be cut off and there would be no escape. Similarly, a fire that may start on Chittering Road in the precinct of Jess or Smith Road would cut off even a larger percentage of population with no escape other than to head north through Shady Hills. So, councillors, the situation that we are now in is that the current owners are in negotiations with Cube to purchase their land for development. The two most important conditions for that sale to proceed is the subdivisional approval through the State Planning Commission and a finalised arrangement with the City of Swan. Cube planned to be on the ground next January. A delay in the City of Swan arrangement could jeopardise the sale if there are any delays. My motion here gives clarity to Cube, the current owners, and, most importantly, the residents of Shady Hills who have waited for this road for a very long time, for too long, who would face a considerable safety issue, and still do, every fire season.
Councillor Henderson is the seconder.
Briefly, councillors, a little bit of history. When this was proposed to be done, we couldn't get any support from the state government. Regrettably, that just went on and on and on. When the fire occurred, still nothing happened in terms of any commitment. And councillors may know that at the state election, I had a commitment from the Liberal Party, as it happens, and might give you a bit of a hint from where I'm at, Mr. Councillor Johnson, but I don't have to answer your questions in this room. The point I make is that when that commitment was made, we saw the state government suddenly stump up some money. So I'm very pleased to see that there is a commitment there to get on with this. There's an opportunity to get on with it, and I think we should make this happen as quickly as possible. A delay is something we can't afford to have happen. We've got to get to a point where we can say that the residents have a safe exit should another nasty fire occur. Thank you.
Councillor Catalano speaking against.
Yes, thank you. I first of all want to acknowledge that the 250 residents that live at Shady Hills are in a precarious position. It's no doubt last summer proved that they are in a fire-prone area. And I've also spoken to the landowners that want to move forward their plans with Cube, and there's all this extra hurry and rush that's got to be done. But tonight I'm also considering the allocation of ratepayers' funds. And I think that we need to always, when we're talking about allocating considerable sums of money, in fact, this could be $3 million covering the full cost of the road if the developer doesn't get their subdivision through. We have to purchase the land. We're going to have to build the road. So the City of Swan's going to cover the full extent of the costs of this road. And I think we need to put that expenditure into a comparative framework and look at the risk that other intersections or other roads in the City of Swan pose to those particular people who are affected. And for instance, I will bring a comparison to the Chamber tonight, and that is the intersection of Amazon Drive and Eltone Road. Now, I know there's 250 people at risk at Shady Hills, but I can tell you on a daily basis there are more than, on a daily basis and a cumulative effect over the year, there's more than 250 people that are daily put at risk at that intersection. There is a great need for expenditure on resolving that intersection. And, the funds used at Shady Hills for 250 people's safety, which I acknowledge, when we're talking perhaps in the thousands or the tens of thousands of people who are daily at risk and increasingly at risk as the traffic increases in that area, I think we need to put all these expenditures into proportion. And so tonight I have to say that ultimately I'm concerned about the cost to the city of approving this, and I think that we need to look at the risk that other very expensive projects pose to our ratepayers and residents in other areas and actually weigh it up. And unfortunately tonight I'm going to have to say that probably in comparison there's more people at risk at that intersection that I just pointed out right now, not only to property but to life, and that is why I think that perhaps the funds would be better allocated elsewhere, or at least find other ways so that the city, perhaps they could even ask the state government to cough up more money, because Councillor Lucas indicated when we talked about this that in fact Shady Hills was approved by WAPC, and perhaps, as I suggested last week, we wait to see what the outcome from the subdivision approval, so that we've got a bit more certainty about how much it's going to cost the city, because it means that other people in the City of Swan are going to have to go without, and I think that's a very important consideration and one that I don't accept tonight. Thank you.
Question, Councillor Henderson.
Could Mr Coaten respond? Have we had any state government funding for the roundabout as suggested by Councillor Catalano?
Mr Coaten?
If you're referring to the intersection of Altona and Amazon, no, we haven't.
So,
I have a question for Mr Coaten, sorry. Before we go any further and I have my part of the debate, the intersection of Altona and Amazon, and I pretty well disagree with everything that Councillor Catalano said, and I'll say that in debate, but my question is, where does it rank on our dangerous intersections?
It ranks number 56 in the City of Swan, so there's 55 that are worse. From the 5 years from 2016 to 2020, there were 10 crashes at that intersection, 3 resulting in medical attention and 7 resulting in property damage only.
Sorry, from 2016
to 2020.
Thank you.
So, go back to where we were. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This has been going on for years and years, and through no fault of the people who reside in Shady Hills, they've been left with no exit. So I can't support this more. I think supporting this motion will absolutely ensure that the residents have a second road. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion. Any speakers for or against? Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. So Shady Hills goes back to about 2006 when it was approved against the wishes of the City of Swan by the then Planning Minister. And we knew at the time, and the reason we didn't support that subdivision because there was only one road in and one road out. Over the years, I think the people of Shady Hills have been lucky. They've dodged bullets. But I think it's got to the time now where their luck's going to run out. If we have another fire similar to the one we had earlier this year, and there's no second alternative to evacuate those 250 residents, then I think that we should be doing all that we can. And the City of Swan won't be paying for all of it because the state government has actually funded 1.9 million. The current landowners, and if their subdivision is approved, and they don't see any reason why it shouldn't, will then be contributing another 43%. So realistically, the City of Swan, I think, would be putting in under $1 million. To compare the intersection of Altone Road and Amazon Drive as a major risk compared to possibly fatalities from the bushfire, I don't think there's no comparison. That's why I asked where does it rank. I thought it was about 63, but I'm told it's 56. So there'd be 55 other intersections that would need that funding prior to that intersection. And I don't recall a fatal accident there, and I've lived in the area for 37 years. And there's 10 crashes in the last 5 years, or 4 years. What's that, 2.5 crashes a year, and 3 required hospitalisation and the other 7 didn't. So I think that's a very unfair comparison. I know why it was entered into the debate tonight, but I won't say anything further about that. As I said, I support the residents of Shady Hill to get that second access as quickly as possible. You heard the deputation tonight, or the public statement, saying time is of the essence. If this is further delayed, it could be another 12 months before Cube can get their agreement in place with the current landowners, and that road would be delayed for another fire season. I'm not prepared to do that. I'm happy to support the people of Shady Hills. They've been relentless in their application to try and get this second road approved, and I think the sooner the better. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Question, Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mayor. Point 1, we're authorising the CEO to take a loan of $5 million payable over 10 years. Now, that amount does concern me. However, we've heard from Councillor Lucas that we may be paying less than $1 million. I just want some certainty put into the debate over what we may end up paying And secondly, I want to ask what sort of advocacy work has been done on this over the years, given that state government imposed this development on the city. Why are they only putting in $1.9 million and not funding it completely, given it was their development effectively?
Mr. CEO or Mr. Coaten?
Just seeing if that question relates to the actual meeting.
Well, it's in the original.
So, Mr. Mayor, I can certainly speak in relation to the advocacy. The funding for that road has been a strong advocacy issue for the city since my time here, and I understand previously it has been as well. And I think during the recent Wooroloo bushfires, we took that opportunity to advocate pretty strongly with the state government with regards to the funding of the road at Shady Hills. And as a result of that, that's why the state government's come up with the $1.9 million.
So it's only recently.
Yeah.
Okay. So, ask any questions?
And the extent that we would be potentially only...
The other part of the question, the extent to which we would only be, as Councillor Lucas said, most likely paying just under $1 million. Is that any truth in that? I just want
to... Mr. Coaten?
Not saying that you're untruthful or anything, Councillor, but...
Yeah,
Councillor,
yes.
Mr. Coaten?
Yes, that's what's in the report. So if everything goes to plan and the subdivision proceeds, that's the the estimated amount, the total estimated amount the city will be paying would be $950,000.
Councillor Johnson, question?
Question, Mr. Mayor. It's one of those ones with a number of... it's a scenario. In the event that we pass this motion, and then for some reason the landowner decides not to proceed, and then the city builds the road, and then the landowner decides to go ahead with the subdivision after all, will the city then receive its contribution and reduce the city's costs to $950,000?
Mr. CEO, Mr. Coaten?
I can't answer that with certainty. It would be something we could look at having, perhaps something. I can't answer that with certainty.
Any further speakers for or against?
Speaking for the motion.
Councillor Congleton.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, as an ex-firey, I couldn't even draw a distinction between a landlocked bushfire-prone area and a intersection in the metropolitan area. To think that anyone in Shady Hills would be landlocked with a fire chasing them from all directions, the possibility of loss of livestock, their entire well-being, if not their own life, to me is just unbelievable. I was originally going to defer this item, as Council would know, from the Agenda Forum meeting of last week, and then decided not to do that because of the new amended motion. I think the Council needs to look at addressing the Altone Amazon Drive position in another form of motion to either bring it up from 56 on the list to where it might sit, and conversations with the state government in relation to that. But I think it's imperative that we give these people up at Shady Hills at least an opportunity to escape should an event of a fire of the destruction we've just seen happen to them.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, really what I want to say really relates to the answer to the question. It appears to me that a scenario could emerge whereby a landowner, and I'm not suggesting this could happen, could exploit this amendment here to reduce their costs. And I think for that reason I can't support this. I can support deferring it. I think we need to have more certainty around how our money is going to be spent, and that we are going to get an outcome of spending $950,000 and not $3.1 million. I think it'd be fairly easy to come up with some way of adjusting this agreement so we can be reasonably confident. I've no idea what that is. We need to discuss that with staff. It's too complex to discuss here, but a scenario could easily arise whereby the subdivision goes ahead and we're paying the full amount of money instead of the 950k. Regarding whether the Shady Hills is dangerous or not, the only thing I can say is I am a volunteer firefighter and I have been to Shady Hills I think 2 or 3 years ago when the fire was apparently approaching. It was on the other side of the valley, and I think we spent about 6 hours watching it, and it did not actually come up the hill for some unknown reason, thought to be related to a rotary effect. I don't know how long people have been living in Shady Hills, but I guess they
30 years.
30 years, good. Well, you've been there for 30 years, and I think another year to sort this out wouldn't cause any problems. You've got a very well-equipped fire service that are quite capable of protecting you. So I think to ensure that we're spending the ratepayers' money wisely, I think we should defer this for more information, and I'll be voting against this amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Coaten, you got a comment?
Sorry, one thing I perhaps should have mentioned in my earlier answer, the amended motion by Councillor McCulloch talks about constructing the road to an appropriate standard, so the option would be there for council not to construct it to the full subdivision standard. So in that sense, the developer wouldn't be getting a free subdivisional road. It could be constructed for fire and emergency purposes at a lower cost.
Mr. Russell, I think you also had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it might go to the question posed around the scenario: what happens if we construct the road and later on the applicant subdivides? Well, what I can say in relation to that is that any subdivision approval they will have a condition on it, as it was previously, to say satisfactory arrangements for the provision of this road. So if we ended up building a road to, let's assume, to a full gazetted road standard, and then the applicant down the track subsequently decided to fulfil that subdivision and enact it and seek clearances to create lots, they would be bound by that condition, requiring a satisfactory arrangement. We would simply go back to the position of saying you pay per lot, pro rata for the cost.
Councillor Lucas.
Question to Mr. Coaten. So if this motion got up tonight, Mr. Coaten, we're ready to start construction tomorrow, next week, next month. Where's the design and construction program at?
The intention of the agreement with the developer is that the developer would do the design and construction. The concept design, the 15% design, is in place. So I can't speak. I'm not familiar with exactly where it's up. But obviously, we'd have to sign the agreement first. But as Mr. Atkins has indicated, they would be on site in January.
So we'll have certainty going forward, and perhaps a question to Mr. CEO or Mr. Russell, we'll have certainty going forward by January whether the current landowner has sold to the developer, so we go through with certainty, because we're not even constructing anything yet. We won't be doing anything until January.
You got a question, Councillor Colley? Would you get the answer? Someone answer that? I think that's correct.
Yeah, the developer will be undertaking construction in January, is what they'll be starting on site in January.
Councillor Cole, you got a question?
Through you, Mayor. Mr. Coaten, you said that it didn't need to be built to a standard, but then again you say the 15% design has been completed to an ultimate standard. So I'm just wondering how, if it's already been designed to, obviously being fully sealed, how we then go back to a lesser standard in the event that the money's not available.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I may have been unclear in my answer. The design, the 15% design, that it's been completed, and assuming that the agreement is entered into and the subdivision proceeds, then it would be to the full subdivisional standard. So my comment in relation to the appropriate standard would be in the event that that would be an option for City in the event that the subdivision doesn't approve. So it could be constructed to a standard appropriate for its needs.
Any further speakers for or against? Another question.
Just putting my previous question into yes or no format. So in the event that we build the road and then at some future point in time subdivision proceeds, the City will not be out of pocket.
Mr Russell?
Yeah, exactly. If you'd be expecting to have a condition on the subdivision approval subsequently, or if they applied for a new application, we could say satisfactory arrangements for the contribution towards the cost of the road that we've built. There's also provisions in the Act that actually operate to say that a person that creates a road that benefits the subdivision of someone else may recover costs from them. So there's a double up both in the Act and in the potential of a condition on subdivision. So, short answer is yes.
Any further speakers for or against? Being none, Councillor McCulloch, I'll ask you to close.
There's probably not much further to say, Mr Mayor, except councillors, I think in reading or thoroughly reading the motion and the information pertaining to this item, taking that into consideration with our staff's responses and clarifications this evening, and considering that, yes, as councillors for the City of Swan, we are here to steward our ratepayers' money, but we can't really compare even amounts of money to losses of life. And it would be negligence, and I'm speaking for myself on my behalf, to not attend to this in the light of even the ongoing costs and trauma and the miracle that no lives were lost at Tilden Park in the fires of February 2020.
Okay. We now put the amendment. Those in favour? It is carried with the exception of one. That becomes part of the standing motion. I've got a mover and a seconder for the standing motion. Is anyone against? Wish to debate it again? In that case, motion is carried 14-1. Councillors, we do have a procedure in place to have around about now comfort break, so we'll have a 10-minute break and we'll re-adjourn. The intersection upgrade of Queens Road and Great Eastern Highway South Guildford, and a proposed motion from Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to send the intersection design for the junction of Queens Road and Great Eastern Highway and the table of submissions at page 632 to page 647 of the agenda to Main Roads WA, together with a request for a signalised intersection. 2. Defer a decision to a future meeting of Council following Main Roads WA response being received. 3. Record the reason for changing the officer's recommendation as 1. The design does not reduce the risk of accidents for vehicles turning right from Queens Road into Great Eastern Highway. And 2. The table of submissions has 127 responses, of which 76 were objections, the majority submitting that the design will not make the right turn safer.
Have a seconder? Councillor Scanlon. Is anyone against? No. Okay, there is. And you wish to debate it, I assume? No, I don't. Okay. Anyone wish to debate it? In that case, I'll put it. Do you want to get up to speed, or are you right?
I'll be fine, thank you.
Okay. No one wishes to debate it. Okay, now put it straight to vote. Those in. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's quite important we explain this. So, councillors, can you please turn to page 632 of your agenda? Because this is entirely about the submissions, and there's an unusual feature to the submissions. So, councillors, the submissions on page 632 of the agenda say it all. So, if we look at the top one, there, 1 talks about a roundabout or traffic lights there to better manage the flow of traffic. 2, no comment, and then it says 3. Turning left is not an issue. Turning right from Queens Road is the issue with congested traffic on Great Eastern Highway during peak hours. Number 4, thank God, I hate this intersection. It's an absolute pain to turn right in and out of. 5, this proposal will egress delays and difficulties for but fails to fix the safety issues in turning right. 6, turning right, safety is the real issue. I think 7, this area is a danger as you turn into a point where lanes merge. 8, this fails to address turning right safety issues. 9, wouldn't lights be better? 12, turning left, not so much an issue, but turning right, especially at peak hour, definitely needs an improvement, and so on and so forth. If you go all the way through it, what you'll see is that the persistent view is that the issue is turning right out of Queen's Road into Great Eastern Highway, where you're turning right onto the bridge to take you into Guildford. Now, the issue is that at the point when you're sitting at the intersection to turn right, if you look left, there's a very slight rise in the road, but it's slight enough to hide the cars coming towards you. So it's quite difficult to see the cars coming from the left at a point where you're trying to turn right. And in addition, to the right, the cars are in a single lane. To the right, there's a merge between a single lane and a double lane. There have been lots of accidents. So in summary, the community do not believe that this particular design is the solution. So although the current design puts in place, doubles up the Queen's Road, makes it a two-lane road as it approaches Great Eastern Highway, making it easy for people to turn left. As you can see from the submissions, that's not going to solve the problem. The issue is turning right. In fact, actually having two lanes of traffic, one of which is going to turn left and one of which is going to turn right, may even make it more dangerous, because if you're in the right-hand lane trying to turn right, you now have a car to your left that you're having to look over. And if you're in a smaller car and it's a larger car to your left, you're now looking past a car and you've still got the issue with the slight rise in the road in Great Eastern Highway. So although this is it's great that we've got the design, it's great that we've got progress, but you can see from the enormous number of submissions, and I think there are, 127 responses, 76 are objections, and even the ones in favour are saying turning right is more difficult. So, councillors, I'm asking you to support my motion one more time. We would like to go back to Main Roads and ask them to put a signalised intersection here, because this has been the desire of this community for an awful long time. You can see by the very large number of submissions that this is quite an important issue. The very large Rose Hill and development, which is still expanding, uses this road. Anybody going into, or the majority of people going into the city, or certainly everybody going to Guildford, would take this road. And the subdivision is continuing to be developed, so the level of traffic will increase. So, councillors, we've lived with it for so long. We want the correct solution. This is not it. Please support my motion to defer and write again to Main Roads. Thank you.
Councillor Scanlon is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, I'd like to support what Councillor Johnson said with some further information about the intersection. There's over 3,000 cars a day use that intersection. It's only set to increase with the Rose Hill development. It's actually a Category F intersection, which I believe is the worst category we can have. It's incredibly dangerous, and it's getting more and more dangerous. We need to do something significant with this intersection, because what we're proposing is not enough. I've had a few near misses there. Everybody I know hates using that intersection, but it's a high traffic area onto Great Eastern Highway, and we need to ensure the safety of the residents. I'll never forget speaking to a business owner on the corner there, and she called me to say that she had had to assist a woman who was heavily pregnant, who'd been in a car accident, into an ambulance off to the hospital from an accident at that intersection. It's we need to do something. There will be a fatality there if we don't. Please support Councillor Johnson's motion to send this back to Main Roads and ask them to do more. Thank you.
Councillor Richards, the Speaker against the motion. Any speakers for the motion? Councillor Kiley.
Councillors, how much development are we going to put in that Rose Hill estate before we concede the fact that we need a set of lights? We've seen so many houses go into the area. We've got increased densification in the area, approval for that recently. We've had the unit development go up in the area, which was approved but then later approved by council and then later knocked back by the WAPC, I believe. We're putting more and more people into this area, and this is the only exit. So at some point we're going to have to concede the fact that we just need a set of lights. It's called development, it's called progress, and we need to get on board with that. The idea of progress, and we're just going to have, it's a requirement of, I mean, we just can't keep putting people into that area and expecting that they somehow squeeze out and put their lives at risk exiting that area. So I'm in full support of Councillor Johnson's motion, and I encourage you to do the same. You'll note that the people who are speaking so far are familiar with this area. I personally know the people that Councillor Scanlon referred to, and that was very unfortunate, but I agree there will be a death there soon. And as we talked about Shady Hills before, I think that example where we're putting lives at risk, we also talked about deflections in roads and putting people's lives at risk, and Councillor Lucas mentioned that us not putting the pre-deflections in, would put the city at risk of, being responsible somehow. So we need to take responsibility for this intersection too, and say that we need to have this set of lights put in, and we should do it now rather than and advocate for it instead of accepting another roundabout. Thank you.
Councillor McNamara.
I don't know the exact distance, but the closest set is at Kalamunda Road.
How far is that? About 250 metres, I'd say, just a guess. And the question is, would stopping traffic there with traffic lights?
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would putting traffic lights there, stopping traffic, create a backlog of traffic from the point of view of just 200 metres up the road, another set of traffic lights?
Mr. Cade?
Will be obviously dependent on traffic volumes and how they were synced, but main roads generally wouldn't approve traffic signals that close to each other.
Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Henderson.
Briefly, councillors. Main roads can adjust the timing on the traffic lights to provide a bigger gap so that traffic can get out and turn right off Queen Street. The fact is, I haven't seen a petition to the Minister for Transport saying, help, we need this fixed. It's a main roads issue. Why haven't we seen that? How about we see a motion from a councillor to undertake a study and to present a petition to State Parliament saying, hey, we've got a problem, it's your road, it's got to be fixed. In the meantime, while all this goes on, we do need to put some widening in that intersection to allow traffic to flow. I think getting this done now is something we have to do, but in the meantime, let's get up the ante, because we know main roads are intransigent. They'll just simply dig in and say no, 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 as they always do. So put the pressure on. I mean, frankly, council can do very little about this. We all know that. So put the pressure on the state. Thank you.
Speaker for the motion, Councillor Lucas.
I'm supporting the motion, but I don't know why. Well, I do know why, and I'm going to try and explain it. I've read all the submissions, and we're looking at spending $1.2 million for no real benefit. It will help cars wanting to turn left. Well, they don't have an issue really now, except they might get stuck behind a car turning right. But I'm surprised Councillor Johnson wants us to write to main roads. I thought he'd want us to write to the UK highways people and ask them to solve this problem. Because he didn't want to listen to main roads before. We know the answer. But my main objection is I don't want to see $1.2 million of ratepayers' money spent combined with that money that's already been contributed by the developer. And we can't stop sales going in at Rosehill Waters, just like we can't put in the traffic lights because we don't control that. So I've got no problem to defer it, go back to the Main Roads Department. In the meantime, someone should be putting pressure on the local members, to put pressure on the minister, to come up with another solution. So I'm happy to support the deferment, not commit $1.2 million, give Councillor Johnston the opportunity to write to UK Highways to see if they've got a solution, because Main Roads have already told us what their solution is. They're not going to do anything. So thank you very much.
Speaker against the motion. No other speakers. Councillor Johns, you can close.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, Councillor Lucas, I don't think we'd have much success asking Highways England to fund our intersection design. I think we've got authorities here who can design traffic signals perfectly well. There's roundabouts we seem to have a bit of a problem with, and we can't put a roundabout in this location. There's not enough room. So I do take on board entirely that we ought to be looking at doing something in addition to writing to Main Roads, and I think we can certainly do that. I think certainly we can speak to the community to get a petition up. I think it's clear that the community do not want this particular design because it does not get them what they want. So I will personally talk to the South Guildford Community Association. I know Councillor Scanlon and Councillor Prodovnik will be interested in joining me doing that, and we will see if we can get a petition, because it's pretty clear from the submissions a lot of people feel good about it. But as Councillor Lucas points out, it would not be the right thing to do to go ahead and spend $1.2 million of ratepayers' money on something that the local community don't want, and it is the wrong thing to do when we should be talking to state and federal organisations to get funding. So, councillors, please support my motion to defer this. Thank you.
Give the motion. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Carried. Item now 5.3 is the Guildford parking change of time restrictions, and Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my proposed motion is a deferral, and it's that Council resolve to defer consideration of this item to a future ordinary meeting of Council, and the reason is to allow time for staff to present Council with options to address community concerns raised in consultation at a future briefing session.
Up a seconder. Councillor Johnston. Is anyone against? Carried. Item 7.2 is a review of committees and council, and a proposed motion from Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proposed motion is a council resolve to adopt the revised terms of reference for the Tender Review Committee and Audit Committee, de-establish the Swan Development Committee, retain the Events and Relationship Committee, and adopt the revised terms of reference. 4. Not adopt the draft policy POL-C-182 civic functions, ceremonies and receptions, and record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendation is that the existing Events and City Relationships Committee is providing the appropriate advice to the staff and achieving the desired outcomes.
I have a seconder. Councillor Congerton. Is there anyone against?
Amendment? No. Councillor McNamara. Who seconded? Councillor Congerton. You said Councillor Congerton.
Yeah, I got Congerton.
And then you said Councillor.
I was the mover.
Yeah, and the first hand I saw was Councillor McCulloch.
You said Councillor. You said Councillor.
Sorry, Councillor McCulloch. My apologies. Hang on a second. That's better. Okay, and I have councillors against. Well, let's hear it, but it'll be at the...
To include the point 3 from Councillor Johnston's alternative motion, no longer hold the Avon Descent council function as part of the city's program of events unless subsequently approved by the council.
Mover and seconder?
No, I can't accept that, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, then you're going to have to move in this amendment. You're going to have to try and debate it.
I will move that amendment if I can get a seconder.
Just a point of order here, Mr. Mayor. This is actually my amendment here, so I'd like to move it if I may.
Well,
no. That's why I put it on the order paper, so as I could move it. So I'd like to move those items, if I may.
Well, I'm only moving one of them, Councillor, so...
I'm moving both. That's why.
Well, I'm moving one of them.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, Councillor Johnson, but Councillor Kiley is moving an amendment to something that's on the table, so you're moving it and you're going to need a seconder. Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor Johnson? Anyone against the amendment? Yep. Okay, come on, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, unless subsequently approved by the Council, is a very good condition in brackets of point 3 in Councillor Johnson's amendment. And apologies, Councillor Johnson, if I've jumped the gun, so to speak. Unless subsequently approved by Council. So we can still have the avant dissent Council function, but we need to take it to Council, basically, and see whether we're going to proceed with it. But unless it's brought to Council, we're not going to have it. If we bring it to Council and we all decide we want to attend, then we can proceed with it. I'm not too sure how many councillors attended the last function, but it's not that well attended by councillors, I believe. I have attended one in the past, and I think Councillor Johnson's change there would be a good thing to include in Councillor Congdon's motion.
Councillor Johnson's the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, one of the strange things about this event is it's not entirely clear what it's for. I think earlier in the document we've got here, I think in section 10, what is the purpose of the City VIP event? It says to enable councillors an opportunity to share the day and event with our local members, sponsors, honorary freemen, city managers, executive and their invited guests. Well, I think the point is that if councillors and others wanted to go along and watch the avant descent, they could do so anyway. It's open to everybody. You just choose your spot on the river and watch people paddling past or powering their boats past. I guess the other point is this. The amount allocated to the budget, it says on page 19, councillors, is $19,000. I think if we're looking to save money, this is a way of saving money. The answer as to what's the purpose of this, it doesn't give any purpose of advocacy or obtaining grant funding, or in any way saying, "Oh, look, here's a wonderful thing the City of Swan does." It's nothing at all. It's just to watch boats going past. So you can do that anyway, councillors. So I would say let's save the money. The other point is I've had very strong feedback from the community that they think this should stop. So I would urge council to discontinue this event. I do realise that some councillors like it, but the fact is we've got to move with the times. We've got to adapt to the community views, and information is out there much more so than it was prior to the world of social media. So I think we probably need to call a halt to it. We can spend the $19,000 on lots of useful things. So councillors, please vote for this amendment, and I'll foreshadow if it's passed. I'd also move item 4, which is an important part of it. Thank you.
Speaker against Councillor Kiley's amendment. Councillor McNamara.
First of all, when Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kiley moved the amendment, I thought it was totally opposite to item 3, that Councillor Congdon retain the events and relationship committee, but then reading no longer hold the function as part of the city's programme of events. Events, Mr. Mayor, usually involve councillors. This motion, from the point of view of the amendment, is, I believe, and it's really the thin edge of the wedge as far as I'm concerned. It's the avant descent this time. It's the Christmas function next time. It is it is the councillors or the mayor's dinner at the time after. So there will always be some event that is not agreed with or is questioned from the point of view of the cost, and we can do more with our money. But this has been part and parcel of the City of Swan for many, many years. It's been part of the actual the day-to-day running of the council for many, many years. For as far as I can remember, way back, I'm only 33 years in this country, and the Avon Descent was an integral part of the events that actually happened within the City of Swan. It happened in the city of Bayswater. Bassendean run it. So everybody runs it. So it's part of the events. So with regard to, and this is the only reason I'm against this, the financial side of it is, look, we're going to spend the money on something. And I guarantee you that if we don't spend it on ourselves, right, if we don't spend it on ourselves, we'll find some other reason to spend it. And I have no problem saying that we'll spend it on ourselves, because that's exactly what the events committee, you have your Christmas party for our families, you have the Avon Descent, and you also have the mayoral dinner. So it's the only three of the only things that councillors get a little bit of a payback, we call it, right, from the point of view of the community, and that's it. So basically the events committee must stay, the Avon Descent must stay, and the only concern I have is the location of the Avon Descent. And thank you. Bye.
Speaker for the amendment. Councillor Richardson. Are you speaking for the amendment as opposed to Councillor Coley? You just put your hand up, so if not, okay. Speaker against the amendment. Councillor Lucas.
First of all, I answer Councillor Kiley's question. 11 councillors responded or RSVP to attend the event, so only 4 didn't. So I think it's pretty popular amongst councillors. In fact, one councillor RSVP didn't turn up, but their friends turned up, and that's fine by me. We did have some politicians there. We had our local member, Michelle Roberts, Upper House member, Donna Farragut, neighbouring President John Daw from the Shire of Mundaring. We have changed this event over the years. In previous years, it was a much larger gathering at a different location where councillors can invite up to 10 guests, and this year we were reduced to inviting 4 guests. So there has been a big backward step in trying to make it a more subdued function. But this is my own personal view. It's a time where I can take my wife out and relax, have a couple of friends, or in fact the people I invited were 2 business owners in the Swan Valley and their wives. We could relax, have a chat, catch up with other councillors in an informal setting, and enjoy the largest whitewater rafting boating event in the world. We put on, and I forget whether it's $50,000 or more, for a free family fun day to be held on Lilac Hill in conjunction with Lotteries West and other local governments. Should we cancel that as well and say, well, let's have no public events for the Avon Descent? I don't think so. So I'm comfortable with the initial amendment by Councillor Congadin. I don't believe that there's any need to cancel this, and if you leave it as the amendment that every year the council will approve or disapprove it, you're going to have this same debate every year, toing and froing. So my point of view is, until that time comes, I'm quite happy to make the Avon Descent function part of our events program. Thank you.
Okay, Speaker for the amendment. Is speakers for or against? Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this event, again, we talk about the mayoral dinner and we look at the $890 million we got in federal grants a couple of years ago. We look at the Avon Descent and the opportunity for councillors, families and invited guests. We had one of our homeless Indigenous women in the vulnerable category, around 55 years old, attend that event with us. She had the possibility of possibly a couple of job opportunities at the end of some of the conversations that day, and she was able to share her story to many people to highlight some of the needs in our city. I can't put a price on that. We had another community member come who is a leader of a significant women's multicultural community group in the city of Swan. She had an opportunity to speak to a lawyer and another community leader who were able to help her negotiate and weave her way through maybe a 3 to 5 year plan of self-sustainability and potential grants to continue to fund and support these women. I can't put a price on that, and suddenly an amount there is looking very insignificant. Councillors, we're constantly campaigning for not this, not that. I want to see us, if we're really, really keen, we're not we're campaigning at a state and federal level for some of the restaurant usage and the dinners for 6 or more guests and the budgets for bars and the different dinners that carry on at far, far greater levels that we don't always know a lot about and we don't always ask questions about. We need to ask about. So let's keep it all in perspective. This was a valuable event, certainly for me, and I'm sure for others.
Speaker for the amendment. Speaker against. Councillor Congleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The intent of the review structure was to ensure that the existing committee could make decisions. I'll retract that, to offer opportunities to the staff for the various events. What is in this conversation missing is the number of people that went with the councillors from the community. And I note there was some commentary raised in some of the questions to council on who invited who and why. We were asked to bring a number of up to 4 guests. Some brought 2, some brought 4, some didn't bring any, as far as I'm aware. But in terms of the day and the day itself and the conversations that took place with our community members was very fruitful. So I don't see why we need to cancel an event of this small size to save X amount of dollars when it could bring far more than the value of the cost to hold it.
Speaker for the amendment. Any speakers for or against? Further speakers? Councillor Kiley, I'll ask you to close.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to point out, councillors, that this is not about cancelling this event. The amendment is not about throwing it out, getting rid of it, not this, not that, stopping it completely. The amendment is about prudently and responsibly spending, deciding on how we spend our ratepayers' money. And actually, as Councillor Lucas right at the end of his speech pointed out, that it would come back to council. We'd all show wouldn't even have to be a formal sitting of council. We would show our hands as to how many people would turn up. And in this year, if 11 people wanted to attend and 4 didn't, then it would go ahead. And in every year we would do that. So we would vote for it, whether we want to proceed with it or not. So it's not to stop the event. The event does serve good purpose, as Councillor McCulloch pointed out. And it is an event where we can advocate and bring other people along and do some really good work. This amendment is not about stopping it. Councillor Johnson, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Congleton, Councillor Lucas, you all mentioned this is stopping it. I think Councillor McNamara as well. We are not stopping it. It's simply to ensure that we have a majority of councillors who are actually going to attend the event. That's all it means. That's all it is. We just simply at maybe an agenda forum Who's attending it? Shall we go ahead with it or not?
Point of order, Mr Mayor. This is not correct. It says no longer hold the Avon Descent Council function.
Unless subsequently approved by the council.
But it says right at the beginning, no longer hold. So we're making a decision to no longer hold it.
You wrote that amendment, Councillor.
I've got a further point of order.
What's your point of order?
Well, Councillor Kai is now saying it doesn't have to come back to a formal resolution of council. We can't approve the attendance or the holding of having assent at an agenda forum, not an official meeting. It has to come back to council for a council decision.
Well, if it's involving, $17,000, $20,000 of ratepayers' money, I've got no problem with it coming back to council because it's not our money we're spending, it's ratepayers' money. So I have no problem whatsoever in having a decision of council to decide on whether we're going to get 20, 30% of councillors turn up and have caterers there spending 20, maybe 25,000. I don't know what the total cost is.
Sorry, it was demonstrated earlier that there were more than 30% turn up.
Oh, in this instance, but there's no guarantee every year. We might have caterers waiting there and we might get 3 or 4 councillors and their families turn up. I'm just saying it's ratepayers' money we're using here. Why not just take it as an item to council? We can have a show of hands, yes or no, how many people are going to be bothering to attend, and move forward.
Okay. Now put the motion for the amendment. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. The amendment's lost. So we now go back to the substantive motion from Councillor Congerton. I have a mover and a seconder.
Make an
amendment.
I'd like to make an amendment that we proceed with the Avon Descent, but change the location and the amount of money that's spent on the corporate and catering that was spent this year at the event, depending on the mover.
Mover and seconder. Question, Councillor Lucas.
Has the mover of this amendment got a desired location for the event to be held?
Can I clarify that a bit further?
Thank you.
So we can continue with the Avon Descent event, however, change the structure of the event so it's incorporated into the larger community event.
Councillors, I might just interject here a little bit. This item is about the review of committees of council.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're getting into talking about specific events. So right now I'm going to call a halt to any of that and get us back on track for the item which we are here to debate, which is review of committees. Talking about a single event is now irrelevant. It was part of a motion and it's been defeated. So now we're back to, councillors, and I'll ask you to get back to debate, review committees. We have a mover and a seconder in Councillor Congerton and Councillor McCulloch. Is there anyone against the item presented to us in regards to committees? There is. You wish to debate it? No. In that case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I do want to look over that. I want to debate this one.
Well, you didn't put your hand up as against. That was the only hand that came up as against.
You were looking over there.
Right? And I asked...
Well, I was looking at you and you didn't put your hand up.
He wants to debate it.
I definitely want to debate it.
Well, I must have been looking over here when I saw his hand go up.
Well, you looked at Charlie. You looked...
No, I looked at Councillor Kyle who had his hand up, and you're right there in my line of vision. So I'm happy to let it be debated. Councillor Congerton, you can open.
Thank you. The reason I request that Council resolve to keep the status quo on the civic functions and ceremonies was as a result of the briefing session that we had in this chamber, that no resolve came from a unanimous agreement anywhere in this room to change the policy to include a number of things which we discussed on the day. And so I felt that if there was a position that there was no either compromise or a unanimous position on this committee, then it may as well stay. And I'll say this. We are a couple of months away from an election. And when we come to that election, this chamber could change by any number. could have 6 new councillors, whatever the numbers are. And when it comes to running around the table at the various committees that are made available for councillors to put their hands up to join, then put your hands up and join it. And then you can be part of the recommendations made to the staff moving forward. So I don't see this as a major issue. And in fact, I look forward to, as I said before, at the briefing session, of a commitment by councillors to contribute. But sadly, that didn't happen. So my motion is to retain what we have, and that will be my vote, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McCulloch is the seconder.
I think Councillor Congdon has clarified aspects of it, and there's nothing further. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I have a question.
Question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the staff, I'd just like to ask staff if they can give an indication of the amount of money these events that the Events and City Relationships Committee are considering.
Mr Mayor, the committee considers the Merrill Dinner, which is in the order of $50,000 budget. The Avon Descent, the corporate event, is in the order of 19. I believe the community event is in the order of 75, but I'd have to confirm that figure. And they also consider the councillor Christmas function, which is approximately $12,000. This year was also the Australia Day community event, but I can't recall that amount, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Very interesting committee, this one. When I first got on council, I had to think carefully about what committees I put my hand up for. And I did not put my hand up for this one. But mysteriously and strangely, there was an error in the minutes. And I found myself on the committee, and some councillors might remember that, as a case of, what's Councillor Johnson doing here? Something wrong. And it's a good job I was there, even though I shouldn't have been there. But the minutes show that I was a member, and I did attend. We need to depoliticise this committee, councillors. When I was there, it was clear to me that some things were going on that were really rather...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Sorry, can you hear my point of order?
Yes, your point of... Sit down, please, Councillor Johnson.
Depoliticise. You're drawing now that there is some gang-up of some political party infiltrating infiltrating the committee to make decisions on what? I think you need to choose your words carefully, councillor.
And I'm very sure there is a point of order there, councillor, and you are out of line. So
no, Mr Mayor, that's not a point of order. He's making a political statement there.
Well,
he's speechifying at me.
No, Councillor Judge, just let me deal with... Councillor Johnson, I do believe there's a point of order there, so I'll ask you to retract that and carry on with your debate without going down that path.
I retract that. Councillors, what we've got is a committee controlled by a small number of councillors, but this committee has an enormous amount of influence. And I asked earlier on in this meeting in section 10 which councillors are members of the Liberal Party, and they wouldn't put their hands up.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. You cannot make that
down the exact same path
between
again.
a member
So
of the party.
Yep. If you can't detract that debate, then I'm going to ask you to sit down. But if you've retracted it again, and you won't participate if you continue. So if you haven't got a valid debate without going down that path, then you haven't got a debate. So the choice is yours right now.
You do realise this is on video, Mr Mayor?
Oh, very much so.
We all are aware it's on video.
So,
very much so.
In section 10, we didn't get any answer, and you've had legal advice to that effect. And this committee is controlled by a small number of councillors.
Mr Mayor, point of order again, please.
Councillor, you keep going down the same path, And now I'm going to ask you to resume your seat. And I'm going to sanction you for the rest of the debate because you cannot follow instructions and you want to go down the same path. That's my ruling, and that's the end of it.
I'm moving to set aside your ruling, Mr Mayor, because it's incorrect.
Well, you're going to need a second and majority vote. Got a seconder? Those in favour? Yeah, good, it's lost. You're now sanctioned for the remainder of this debate. Now, Speaker.
I just want to clarify, when Councillor Johnston just said he asked people of a certain political party to raise their hand, well, I didn't raise my hand because I'm not a member of any party, so how could I raise my hand if I'm not a member? Now, Councillor Catalano jumped in and said it earlier.
Right,
Councillor, but I can tell you now,
Lucas, Councillor Lucas, I think we've done that, and we've now.
Well, I need to finish.
Councillor Johnson's place. We understand that. So now I'm going to ask for a speaker. Where were we? For the motion. None. Speaker against. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'd just like to speak briefly to this because I do concur with the staff's recommendation to cease the function of the Events and City Relationships Committee. The reason I agree with the staff is that it's an awful lot of ratepayers' money that ratepayers have clearly told me they don't want us spending. So I believe it needs to be a decision of full council to spend this amount of money. And I do need to say, in response to Councillor Congleton's comment about if we want to be part of a committee, we need to put our hand up at nominations. You were all here in the room at nominations for council. Everybody here knows how that went. Now, I believe I did nominate for this. I nominated for other councillor committees that I really did want to be part of. I was not accepted onto them. I think we all understand what's going on here, and we need to stop this, and we need to disband this committee as per the staff's recommendation and come back to being a cohesive council
Point
who
of order,
vote
Mr.
together.
Mayor. What is going on?
I can
get your point.
clarify it. I can clarify.
Councillors voted on the amendments of every committee, so there's no acceptance or declining. It's voted.
Well, if it pleases you, we could bring up the minutes for that meeting.
It's called democracy, Councillor. There was a vote. The minutes would show a vote.
Okay. Well, I will leave that there, but I would like to urge everyone to consider the officer's recommendation because they've put a lot of thought into this, and I believe it's the best outcome for the City of Swan to follow the officer's recommendation. So please do not support this motion to continue the Events Committee.
Speaker for motion, Councillor McNamara.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've turned on the speaker, as you can see. I support this motion because it is absolutely the right thing to do. I also, Mr Mayor, remember the voting pattern that went on at the election or the appointment of members of the various committees. I also remember standing up here and putting my name forward for the EMRC committee. And guess who got my position? Councillor Ian Johnson. He was voted in by the rest of this committee instead of me. Should I be upset over that, Mr. Councillor Johnson? No. It's called democracy. End of story. Thank you very much indeed.
Speaker against the motion. Councillor Catalano.
I don't want to be too long, but I just want to raise a couple of things about this debate. First of all, going back to the committees and how they were selected, I mean, it's fairly clear that whoever or whatever the majority kind of group is in council seems to, well, it seemed at that time, appeared, in my opinion at that time, to hoggle the committee seats, because actually I didn't get a seat and I put down my name for quite a few committees, and I didn't even get one. So I just assumed that was because, obviously, I'm in the minority here in council. You might call that democracy, but actually, you know what? It's not very fair, and it's not a very balanced view of the community, and it's not a very balanced view even of this chamber. And actually, it was quite a...
Sorry, Mr Mayor, the part of the minority in council, years of voting will disprove that as well. I'm sorry, that's not correct.
Okay, well, we can go back to the minutes. Anyone can go back to the minutes and have a look for themselves. But I'm just highlighting that, and they can. It's a good thing for them to. Anyone who's looking at the streaming could go back and check that for themselves, and make their own opinion. And then on the issue of opinions, I'm just finding it a little bit tedious tonight when a councillor has an opinion and they're not allowed to express it. And I think, I mean, nobody's getting hurt in this chamber by an opinion. So, come on, let's be a little bit more robust and growing up and just not have to put in these points of orders all the time about somebody having an opinion. You can stand up and reject it, but you don't need to stifle the debate because somebody has an opinion about what is apparent to them.
Councillor Carnot,
I'll leave it right there, thank you.
Thank you. But you were lecturing on procedure and not addressing the motion before us. So on that, I am going to terminate the debate now because it seemed to be going nowhere. So I'll ask the mover to close.
Mr Mayor, look, probably enough has been said around the table. I'd just like to move the motion, thanks.
Thank you. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 to 5, the motion's carried. We now move to Part C of the agenda, and the first cab off the rank is C1.1, Councillor Kiley.
Councillors, my motion is that Council resolve to 1. Request the CEO prepare a report on a range of options and cost estimates for a City of Swan funded security patrol service across all suburbs in the City of Swan. 2. Request that the report include options for services that include periods within the day, at night or a mix of both. 3. Request that the report also include the recommended consultation process and costs for consulting all rate-paying properties within the city. 4. Request that the report clearly outlines the operating capability and limitations of each service when responding to, reporting or witnessing any suspicious, antisocial or potential criminal activity. 5. Consider in the report the option for the service provider to be able to issue compliance notices or fines in accordance with existing City of Swan local laws, and request the report back to Council prior to March 2022. And if I could add in one more point that was raised by one of our guests tonight, that we also look at the possibility of an in-house security service.
Is there a seconder?
Question.
Councillor Henderson.
Is this motion to rescind a previous motion to undertake the next stage of consultation for security patrols?
We'll lose a plan to review the Allenbrook Vines very shortly. So would that have an effect, Ms Albright, or not? To go citywide? I don't think so. Okay, so I'll ask you to have a seconder. Councillor Scanlon. Is anyone against? There is. Okay, Councillor Coley, you can open the debate.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's simply to have a comprehensive report brought before Council to look at potentially, with that added in clause, an in-house security service that's capable of doing a range of things. And I don't want to limit the report or what it might come back with. I don't want to limit the options that this report could report on. It's looking to bring it back prior to March 2022. I think whether this report suggests in favour of a security service or reports that we shouldn't, suggests that we recommends that we shouldn't go ahead with it, I think it will lay to bed the issue of a security service or a beefed up Ranger Patrol service across the City of Swan and deal with some of the issues that are circulating in the community as to how we deal with a rise in suspicious or criminal vandalism throughout the city. There's break-ins, there's car theft, a whole range of activities going on, but how we deal with them. If this recommendation comes back to Council in March 2022 is not to proceed with anything, then at least we know then we should be advocating for further police patrols or something of the like. I think this report will just bring out all of the issues and then we can look at it with a clear mind in March 2022. I'm not advocating for the patrols as such in this motion. I'm advocating for the report to look at all the issues because there are so many different opinions out there as to how this would operate, whether it's a ranger service, whether they can, whether we do it in-house, whether we put it out to a service provider. So it's simply about the report. I really want a comprehensive look at the issues and how we might be able to implement it, and maybe it might, as I said, might suggest we don't proceed with it, but I think it'll give us some certainty going forward on how we deal with crime across the city. I'm very interested in to see what other councils do in terms of their ranger patrols. We can spend the time individually going and having a look at that as to how they deal with ranger and security patrols. But I'd rather our staff prepare something for the whole of council so we can look at it together and decide on the next step beyond that. It's as simple as that, councillors. Let's get that report done. Beyond that, I mean, everybody's speculating on how we deal with this issue, and it's a big issue in the community. It's the number one issue that our ratepayers are concerned about: security, their right to peaceful enjoyment of their life in the suburbs or wherever they might live. We need to be doing something about it. Other councils are across the whole of Australia, but I'm not too sure how it might work. I do thank a particular gentleman from South Guildford for phoning up and who was involved in a security patrol service for one of the councils, and he said it's effectively a waste of time. He didn't support it whatsoever. However, he didn't. He said that they spent a lot of their time just driving around, chewing up diesel and wasting ratepayers' money. And I really thank him for putting those thoughts forward. But there may be ways around it to ensure that we're not sending somebody out 24/7 throughout the City of Swan and chewing up diesel, as he said. We might be able to do it just for a period of the night. I don't know. There might be other ways to deal with it. And I'd just rather get a comprehensive report to have a look at that and see what we can actually achieve before we decide either to go ahead with it or to knock it back completely. That's as simple as that.
Councillor Scanlon as a seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support this motion because the community have asked for it. The community where I live in Guildford, there's been a great increase in break-ins, and some people have been assaulted and are feeling very insecure. Furthermore, in Midvale and Swan View, I've had people say that they are concerned for their safety, that they don't feel safe, and as their local government we need to listen to them and consider whether this is a good option for us. So please support the motion for the report, and then we can have a look at it when it comes back to Council. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm opposed to even having a report because I feel that the report would waste staff time. Staff have got better things to do, in my opinion. I'm opposed to this proposed service on grounds of cost and service duplication. I think it's quite easy to look at the cost. I don't think we need a report from staff. So let's just have a look at this. Assume we have one vehicle per ward. and it's operating 24/7, we'd need 4 shifts per ward of 2 security guards per vehicle. So that's 5 wards times 4 shifts times 2 FTEs. That's 40 people plus 10% to cover leave. That's 44 FTEs. And let's assume they earn a modest 50k each. So add on superannuation and work cover, so maybe an extra 15%. Total cost per year is $2.5 million. Plus the cost of 6 vehicles, as we'd need 1 spare, plus radios, uniforms, boots, capsicum spray, etc. The first year cost alone would be about $3 million, which is about 3% on rates. Councillors, Mr Mayor, I don't need an officer's report to tell me we can't afford it. That's 3% on rates when we are priding ourselves on our 0% rate rise target. Then there is the duplication of work that will be done by the WA Police, only not as well. Our city security guards will not have the power of arrest, no guns, tasers, and how would we train them? What would that cost? I think we need to be careful in the city to avoid duplication of work and adding additional cost. We can look at this at quite a high level and say, no, we don't want the additional cost. No, we don't want the duplication of work. I do agree that there are security issues within the city, and I do recognise there are problems, particularly in Midvale and also in South Guildford. But as we've heard, someone who lives in South Guildford has said it's a waste of time. If we believe that greater security is important, then I think we need to lobby the state government to provide greater security. So clearly what we've got at the moment is not working. But councillors, to avoid even the consideration of an additional 3% rate rise, I think we should not consider this report. Thank you.
Speaker for the motion. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If you recall last year, this came up in debate. The Pierce Ward councillors voted this down. I spoke on behalf of the community and I was for the motion to bring the security patrols back. The survey had gone out previous to the local election after I was elected, and so therefore the survey was already in progress, and staff had explained to me that there was not a return rate on those particular surveys at the time. I spoke in depth to the service provider in the Vines, the security patrol manager, in depth about the patrolling, the recording, where those vehicles were, what times, their meal breaks. Yet, on the other hand, I would have, say, nurses from the Vines who spoke to me at work that would say that they would constantly see people sitting down at the golf course not doing anything in particular. So we had a varied response but a low return response on that particular survey, because I think a lot of people didn't return the survey or understand the significance of that. Where the Vines residents were quite happy to have their security patrols reinstated, they were getting a good effect from that. But also I sat with Sergeant Mark Gabani at that time and I spoke to him. We also attended 2 community safety advocacy nights with Jessica Shaw and also Michelle Roberts, and the Sergeant in Charge, Sergeant Gabani, and also the Midland Police attended those 2 forums. I asked in depth how many patrol cars, how many shifts, how many officers we had on at Midland and at Ellenbrook. And I spoke to Jessica Shaw probably just after Christmas in her office, and I also spoke to the local police sergeant again. We will not be getting any more police. We will not be getting any extra patrols. Jessica Shaw pointed out specifically there is nothing more she can do. This was in her office. She said to me, I cannot lobby, although she sat there and said that we're the first Labor government to get another 1,400 candidates, police cadets, but where they're distributed is not in my control, but I am not in any position to be able to write and ask the Minister for more police patrols, say specifically in Ellenbrook. That was the conversation I had with her and with the constituent who, at the time, there was an increase in break-ins at Christmas time in businesses. That was where we left the conversation at that point. I am in favour of a survey going out. I wouldn't like to see staff time wrapped up, but I am in support of having that survey reissued again, because it was coming up at council for I think through you, Mr Mayor, through staff, to be revisited again. Thank you.
The Speaker against the motion. Councillor Congleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I understand the structure that sits behind a report by officers, but I think we firstly need to understand about what's happening in our community. The commentary, Councillor Scanlon, of Guildford being in an issue of assaults, burglary or otherwise, it's interesting that you've got a lower number of assaults, burglaries and thefts and break-ins than you did in the previous number of years. And it's very interesting that of the statistics, 18 was fraud, 20 were drugs, 81 was stealing, and stealing isn't stealing from a home. Stealing could be stealing from the local shops and or from a restaurant. And there was 19 assaults by family, which is something a security patrol person could not be able to intervene in. And in Brabham, which is another area of concern, it's a similar exercise there as well. There's a whole number of assaults by family and stealing. But the issue goes down to what a security patrol can actually do. And that's one of, I think, with Councillor Johnson, I'm in agreement, it's a policing matter and not a City of Swan patrol matter. When a patrol officer cannot arrest, a patrol officer cannot direct, a patrol officer cannot issue fines, and you're suggesting that could be changed, Councillor Carley, and it may well be changed. But the whole nuts of the place is you've got one guy in a car, not two. They won't intervene into a group of kids. They'll back away and walk away. All they can do is do a reporting mechanism to the police, so they don't have those powers. They don't have gas canisters, and they don't have other equipment able to defend themselves as well, because it's not permissible. They don't carry a gun. They're not in a vehicle that is protected. It's probably a little Escort or some other little vehicle they run around in. And so I would be concerned more for the ranger, if you called him that, or the advocate that we have on our vehicles now, and whether it's actually a physical security guard doing this. When you look at doing a survey of the entire city, don't forget we're uniquely different to Belmont, we're uniquely different to Bayswater, and we're uniquely different to Stirling. We have 1,000 square kilometres. We don't have a short structure of suburbs like Bayswater. And I have to tell you, and I hope they're listening.
Sorry, Councillor Congan, I've just got a point of order. I know I take on Councillor Catalano's point, and I don't hate to interrupt you, but we're not talking about... We're becoming experts in security here, but all I'm talking about is getting a report done.
Sorry, probably about an expert in traffic management as well, I would suggest, Councillor, and deflections.
Look, I'm just asking you that you address the report that I'm asking for, rather than looking at all scenarios that possibly might be in a report. That's all.
Okay. So then I'll come back to where I was, 1,000 square kilometres, 62,000 homes or thereabouts, and I did indicate that the other authorities that have them charge small amounts of money, but the rest of the cost is hidden in the rates. Hidden in the rates. To think that you could go ahead for $30 and create a security patrol system is not correct, and I think if this is passed,
Councillor Kiley, Councillor Congan has the floor. I'll ask you not to interrupt.
Okay, so that's my point.
Speaker for the motion. Any speaker against? Councillor Jones.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
I can't support this motion, as I believe, after studying the police crime stats for many of our suburbs in the City of Swan, it's an unnecessary added expense to ratepayers, many of whom are already doing it tough. Interestingly, the crime stats for the Vines, whose ratepayers voted to continue with the security patrols, have gone up from 98 incidents in 2019-20 to 136 in 2021. These periods are for financial years. In general, domestic violence counts for a large proportion of incidents, and this is across the board, which security don't get involved in. Out of the 17 crimes that are reported by WA Police, namely homicide, sexual offences, family assault, non-family assault, threatening behaviour by family, threatening behaviour by non-family, deprivation of liberty, robbery, dwelling burglary, and the list goes on. The security patrols can only report on or take photo evidence of a handful of these offences. The rest they wouldn't be attending anyway. The security officers are not much of a deterrent, as most criminals know that the security person has no power to do anything and will long be gone by the time the police get there. People's perception of security is unfortunately influenced by social media. Incorrect information is posted and many believe that what they read. I've seen posts like 4 black youths walking down the road towards the park. My question is, so are black youths not allowed to walk down the road to the park? We meet regularly with the officer in charge at Ellenbrook. The police model has changed. Before, the old model took away a lot of input by the local officer in charge. Crime has been trending down since this model was introduced, and the officers are achieving great runs on the board. The new model allows for continuity and following through on each crime. The officer in charge has established a proactive investigation team, and this team is cracking down on crime. They're working closely with other agencies to remove tenants, etc., who are causing trouble. Also bear in mind that crime is trending down and the population is trending up. Here's a few examples that I looked up. Guildford, crime came down from 284 to 213 incidents. Beechworth down 1113 to 930 incidents. Midland down from 3663 to 2912. Ellenbrook down 2279 to 1791. Bullsbrook down 2279 to 1791. Caversham up 539 to 648 incidents. And the officer in charge has said that this was due to it being a new development area, and many of the stealing offences were related to new builds having appliances taken prior to installation. And as I've said, the Vines is up despite having a patrol. So I can't see the need for security patrols at this stage. I believe it would put the rates up around...
Councillor Jones, thank you. I'll ask you to close this time. Councillors, I will remind you this is requesting a report, so get back on that. Okay. Question, Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask the CEO, in his opinion, what Councillor Kiley's asking is the CEO prepare a report on a range of options. Number one, how many staff would be tied up in this action? How long would it take? And what would the estimated cost be?
CEO?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I mean, the staff involved in it, I would probably have to defer to Mr Bishop, but within community safety, I would imagine that there would be a couple of staff that we would be involved in preparing the report. However, they wouldn't be involved on a full-time basis. The time and costs, I wouldn't be able to give an estimate on that until the actual officers start investigating some of the options and benchmarking against other local governments and things like that. But maybe Mr Bishop may want to make a comment in relation to staff time.
Thank you, Mr CEO. And through the Mayor, yes, we have given some consideration in preparation for this motion tonight, Mr Mayor. It will need some considerable effort, and that's why we're sort of grateful to the councillor in constructing his motion that he has given at least 6 months to prepare that. We'd anticipate we'd have to put a staff member on working for pretty much and meeting 1 or 2 days a week for most of that period, and we'd create a small project team because we would want to survey other local governments and make sure we can consider all the options in that as proposed in the motion.
Councillor Callahan, you got a question?
No, I don't actually want to.
Okay. Speaker. Okay, Speaker for the motion.
Yes,
Councillors, we are going to have to wrap up soon because I've got a whole heap of confidential items we have to deal with tonight.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not actually 100% in favour of patrol services because of the cost, but actually, what I would like is I'd like some information and I'd like a report. That's what I'd like, and I'd like it because people in the community are saying that there are security issues, and therefore I'd like to have the report, I'd like to have the information, and okay, its staff is going to be tied up giving us a report, but actually the information is invaluable for me to be able to assess whether I'm right in thinking the security patrols are not going to work or whether they are going to work. I might be wrong. Why should I make my mind up before I've got the information? Because I thought that we had to make our decisions based on information. In fact, not on some kind of, analysis that I've done in my own head, because I'm not a security expert. I actually, and I can go by the police stats as well, but, that might be just one view of what, the sort of security issues that are out there and the security issues that need addressing, and whether the police are actually the right, authority to deal with some of these security issues in the community, or whether there's other ways of dealing with it that might not be just security patrols, but there might be other ways, like, rangers or in-house or whatever options are available. So, why not? Let's have the information. So I think let's go ahead with it.
Okay, I'm going to take one last speaker in Councillor Lucas, and then I'm going to ask to close because, like I said, Councillor, we've got 20 minutes till we close the meeting. I need to deal with some confidential stuff.
Thank you. I don't support the motion, and particularly point 3 has got me confused. Request that the report also include the recommended consultation process and the cost for consulting all ratepayer properties within the City of Swan. So we're trying to work out how much it's going to cost us after we've done the consultation. Now, we send a survey out to every resident.
Mayor, sorry, I don't know how you're misreading this, Deputy Mayor, but I'm not saying point 3 doesn't suggest we do the consultation after.
Yeah. I think he's talking about how we're going to do the.
It's just to provide.
As opposed to doing it.
Yes, simple as that. It's just in the report. If we went out to consultation, how much would it cost, and how would we consult?
Yeah. Okay,
simple
I think
as
we
that.
get the point, Councillor. You get time to come.
Well, you're asking that the report go out to consultation.
No, not at all.
Well, that's the way I've read it. If I'm mistaken, fine. But I know the last time we went out for consultation.
Mr. Mayor, have we suspended standing orders here? Because I'm not seeing the meeting procedures.
Councillor Kylie, you made your point. Councillor Lucas, if you can wrap it up, please.
I'll finish my debate. Thank you. The last time we went out citywide, it cost us in the order of over $50,000 to consult with all ratepayers.
Mayor, point of order. Sorry, Councillor Lucas, I just need to point out that we're not suggesting in this motion that we go out and spend $50,000. We get a report back that says maybe it will cost us 50.
I understand where you're going. Yeah.
But I'm hoping that Councillor Lucas will understand before he votes against it for misunderstanding it.
Well, that was one point, and I hope you reset my clock because I've been interrupted that many times. Policing is not our core function. It's that of the state government through the WA Police Force. While you may think that there's rampant crime out there, honestly there's not. But everyone is so protective. I've heard examples, and a gentleman from the gallery got up tonight and said, it only costs sterling $30 per household or whatever. They're 1/10 the size in area, but they've got more, about 70 to 80,000 more population, so perhaps another 50,000 ratepayers. So I just can't support it on a number of reasons. And Councillor Kylie, you really defeated your own motion in my view when you said, the bloke rang you up, he said, I used to do security patrols, I was driving around, wasting my time, doing nothing and burning up diesel. And I think that's where it should end. Thank you.
Councillors, I'm going to close the debate now. Councillor Coley, you can wrap it up. You've got 3 minutes.
Councillors, Councillor Congdon, you might be right. Councillor Lucas, you might be right. Councillor Jones, you could be right. Councillor Johnson, you could be right. But I don't really know. I really don't know. And Councillor Lucas sits there. You might be with a wry smile on your face, Councillor, but you've been out of the game quite a while, I believe, and I don't think you've got all the answers.
Don't make it
and there'd be reasons why people might not want to break into your place, but other people do have that fear that they get broken into, or their car. I mean, it's actually occurring. We saw at Caversham there's crime that's going up, and the statistics that Councillor Jones you were mentioning, we're talking in the thousands of incidents. I mean, even Councillor Johnson said what we have currently is not working. There's an admission in this room that we do have high, crime rates that's unacceptable in the community. And if our ratepayers are telling me that's unacceptable, then I take that on board. I'm not saying that we need to have a security service. I'm saying let's get the facts, to Councillor Catalano's point. It's just a report. We're not experts in this area. Your point, Councillor Congdon, your point, Councillor Lucas, you're making yourselves out to know what the cost is going to be, what is actually occurring in the community. It's simply to do a report. Our ratepayers are calling out for this. It's their number one issue. Take it on board. I ask you to support this report. It's a report. I mean, it's as simple as that. Otherwise, we're just speculating. We're simply speculating as to whether this would work, could work, might work, what it might cost and the like. I'd like some facts around this. And the point about raising the gentleman from South Guildford, Councillor Lucas, is to point out that I am not set in my mind that this would be a solution, but I'm willing to look at the facts. And I think I've got a responsibility to our ratepayers to actually look at the facts and carefully assess them at a future meeting of council and to see whether we do spend any money whatsoever on even going out to consultation. But at least we're going to have the facts in front of us before we decide what to do. Killing the debate here and now, just killing it off completely, I think we're not doing our ratepayers any favour by just killing this tonight. Just a simple report and to see whether it's worthwhile proceeding with. So please just support this for the sake of your ratepayers, because this is what they're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Council now put a vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The motion is lost. Councillors, I am now going to have to deal with the confidential items. So the option with the remaining Part C is to either deal with them prior to the briefing next Wednesday or carry them over to the September meeting. Bit of guidance, anyone? September meeting, happy with that? Sorry.
Mr Mayor, is that within our caretaker period, the September meeting?
I don't think it's any big permanent issue. No.
Well, you're in the caretaker period to the next meeting.
Yep. So is there anything there that we can't deal with, Amanda, in Part C?
There's not anything.
The caretaker issue? Okay. Thank you, councillors. So now go behind closed doors.
So just have we actually made a decision?
What was our decision? Well, there's nothing there that can't wait till the September meeting. Nothing that's an interference.
But some of us want to do it on Wednesday.
Okay, so can I have a show of hands to deal with it Wednesday prior to the briefing? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Councillor Jones, yes or no?
No.
No. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. Councillor's not going to say it's a tie. Okay, can we just finish this, Councillor? We're running out of time. Can just have a motion. Do we deal with it next Wednesday or we move it to the September? So to deal with it next Wednesday. Can you just be quiet for 2 seconds, Councillor? So can I first have a show of hands to deal with this prior to the briefing session next Wednesday? The remaining Part C. Okay, you all clear now? Thank you. Hands up still, go and count it. Yep, I think that's carried, so we'll deal with them next Wednesday. Now behind closed doors, so I'll ask Claire to leave. Thank you.
So you're adjourning the council meeting to deal with item
the remaining
C
Part 4. Yeah.
On Wednesday
Part C.
Next week. And then you'll need a motion to bring the confidential items forward. Yep,
I just need now a motion to bring those confidential items forward and deal with them. Move Councillor Parry, second Councillor McCulloch. Is anyone against? We'll declare that carried.